Rhode Island, the witching tree of Smithfield. In the quiet town of Smithfield, Rhode Island, there once stood a tree that many believed carried a dark and mysterious history. Known locally as the witch tree, it stood in the middle of an intersection seemingly out of place. Its creepy appearance and location became the centerpiece of a legend filled with both tragic accidents and unexplained occurrences. The witch tree was positioned at the intersection of Log Road and Man's School Road, or possibly Man's School Road and Coeur, as locals kind of debate its precise location. And its placement in the center of the road actually caused a number of collisions over the years. Drivers unfamiliar with the intersection often found themselves unable to completely avoid the tree, resulting in some serious injuries and even fatalities. The bark even bore visible scars from these incidents, stripped away in spots where vehicles had slammed into it. Despite the damage though and its seemingly sickly state, the tree continued to bloom each spring. Though the accidents themselves were tragic, they weren't immediately thought of as paranormal. Over time though, the growing list of casualties and the whole dark reputation of the area gave rise to whispers of a curse. Adding to the lore was the proximity of an old house said to have belonged to a witch. This house, which was long abandoned and explored by interested locals, eventually burned to the ground, leaving only its foundation behind. The stories surrounding the house basically contributed to the witch tree's name and reputation, with some suggesting that there was a connection between the two. Those who passed by the tree at night often reported strange sightings. And one of the most common tales of these sightings described ghostly children appearing at the base of the tree only to vanish as cars approached. Drivers with braver dispositions who stopped to investigate found nothing but the battered trunk. And one peculiar ritual known as the witch tree game became popular among local thrill seekers. According to the legend, driving around the tree 3 or in some versions 13 times would summon a ghostly biker. This figure was said to tailgate the driver before pulling alongside their vehicle and disappearing into thin air. And it's unclear whether this tale caused more accidents on the already dangerous road, but the connection between the game and the tree's whole dark reputation persisted. Eventually, the tree was cut down though, likely to prevent further accidents and discourage thrill seekers from tempting fate. Even in its absence, the legend of the witch tree still lingers. Some believe that the spirits tied to the tree remain in the area, perhaps the souls of those who lost their lives in the crashes. Others dismiss the whole story entirely, attributing it to eerie atmosphere of the intersection and the human tendency to attach meaning to tragedy. Today, the site of the witch tree is quiet, though some still describe the area as, creepy. For those who seek out remnants of the legend, only the memory of the tree and its strange stories remain. Kentucky, the Headless Woman of Iroquois Park. Iroquois Park, which covers 739 acres in Louisville, Kentucky, has a long and complex history. It was first designed in 1888 by Frederick Law Olmsted, who also created Cherokee and Shawnee parks at what were then the city's outer edges. Often called Louisville's version of Yellowstone, the park features a really big 250-foot hill covered in old-growth forest. At its peak is Lookout Point, which is a popular scenic area that has become one of the park's most recognizable spots. While Iroquois Park is known for its beauty, it's also tied to some, darker and creepy stories. Many visitors who explore its winding trails on quiet evenings have reported some strange and frightening experiences. It often all begins with the sound of a dog barking wildly in the distance, a noise that grows louder and more frantic. A thick fog then rolls in, which clouds all your visibility. The air also takes on an acrid smell of smoke and fire. Those who remain long enough describe seeing a figure then emerge from the fog. Dressed in clothing from the early 1800s, the figure is said to carry her own severed head in her hands, with her blood dripping from her neck as she moves. But yeah, this tale in specific has been shared for generations and kinda grows more darker and more detailed with each retelling. Some say that the Headless woman was once the wife of a farmer who lived on the land before it became a park. According to the story, one night while her husband was away on business, their homestead was attacked. A group of local tribesmen reportedly killed the family's dog to silence it before storming the house. The tale goes on to say that they then dragged the woman outside, beheaded her, and then set fire to the home to destroy all the evidence. Her ghost is said to haunt the park, endlessly walking the trails in search of justice for her violent death. So yeah, the story kinda ends there. There's not really any extra information on why they specifically did this, like part of the legend, but yeah, it's said that she still just haunts the area. New Jersey, Route 55, Indian Curse Road. Route 55, which is located in Gloucester County, has been the site of ghostly sightings, unexplained accidents, and a series of tragedies tied to its development, many of which locals attribute to a curse. The highway's dark history extends all the way back to the early 1980s during its initial construction. The road was built over land believed to be a Native American burial ground. Carl Pierce, or Sachem Wayandaga, a chief and medicine man of the Delaware tribe, warned that disturbing the sacred land would bring misfortune. Soon after construction began, workers reported a series of deadly and unexplainable incidents. One worker was even crushed by an asphalt roller, while another fell to his death when unexpected winds swept him over an overpass. A third worker died suddenly from a brain aneurysm while on the job. These deaths were followed by mysterious illnesses affecting workers and their families, including cancer and other severe conditions. One worker even experienced a bizarre condition where his feet turned completely black. Tragedy extended beyond the construction site too, though. A van carrying 5 Department of Transportation employees exploded in a fiery accident. Family members of workers also suffered sudden losses, such as the parents of a worker killed during the first week of construction. Carl Kruger, the project site engineer, reportedly spoke frequently about the string of misfortunes, but died of cancer not long after, leading many to believe he too had fallen victim to the curse. Even after the road's completion, locals have continued to share all these accounts. M.A., which is a resident familiar with the area, recalled how 2 close family friends were killed on Route 55 during a prom night tragedy in the 1990s. Basically, what happened was the couple's car ran out of gas, and while refueling on the roadside, they were struck and killed by a drunk driver. Another fatal accident occurred near exit 58 when a family friend of M.A.'s died in what was described as a freak accident. Many who drive Route 55 at night notice an unusual number of cars parked along the roadside, fueling speculation that the road still carries its dark reputation. Utah, Moon Lake Monster. Moon Lake has gained a reputation as the home of a mysterious aquatic creature known as Mooney, often compared to the Loch Ness Monster. One of the most well-documented accounts of Mooney comes from Bill Riordan, a former owner of Moon Lake Resort, who described his encounter with Mooney in a 1998 article. Riordan first heard about the creature in 1994 during a campfire gathering at the resort. Gary Sutherland, the father of one of the resort's owners, shared a detailed description of what conditions might lead to a sighting. It goes as follows: that the lake had to be completely calm, with its surface mirror-like without any wind or boat activity to obscure the water. Sutherland explained that sightings typically occurred at dawn or dusk, times when the lake's stillness allowed any disturbances to stand out. Sutherland also described the appearance of a V-shaped ripple moving steadily across the water, often starting from the north end of the lake and zigzagging near the far shore. This ripple was created by a rounded object just below the surface, pushing water in front of it without creating a breaking wave. Although Riordan initially dismissed the story with skepticism though, he soon found himself experiencing the phenomenon firsthand. One morning in mid-June, Riordan was drinking coffee and admiring the lake at daybreak when he noticed the telltale ripple cutting through the water. It moved exactly as Sutherland had described, prompting Riordan to grab his binoculars for a closer look. As he approached the lake, passing the volleyball and horseshoe courts, he focused on the apex of the V-shaped ripple. To him, he could see that it wasn't caused by a fish, bird, log, or boat. The movement was smooth, deliberate, and unlike anything he could identify. The ripple zigzagged toward the far shore, then turned a wide angle and headed back toward the center of the lake. Riordan noted that the rounded object creating the disturbance never really broke the surface, and after several movements back and forth, the ripple disappeared as the sunlight intensified. The entire encounter lasted less than 30 minutes, leaving Riordan puzzled and unable to explain what he had just witnessed. Later that summer, Riordan and his wife saw the same ripple again under similar conditions, though the sighting was shorter in duration. Despite spending 2 full seasons at Moon Lake, these were the only times they directly observed the phenomenon. However, stories of Moody were a constant presence at the resort. Visitors frequently shared tales of strange ripples or shadowy figures in the water. Even first-time guests often arrived with stories they'd heard from friends or family who had previously visited the lake. The details of Moody sightings have been remarkably consistent over the years as well. Witnesses described the same smooth ripple often spotted in the early morning or evening when the water is more calm. The lack of visible features above the surface, though, only deepens the mystery, as observers are left to speculate about the creature's size, shape, and nature. Some believe Moody could be a relic from prehistoric times, perhaps a surviving aquatic dinosaur or an unknown species adapted to the lake's environment. Hawaii, Faceless Woman of Hawaii. On May 19, 1959, an article in the Honolulu Advertiser brought public attention to interesting rumors circulating about the Waialae Drive-In Theater in Honolulu, Hawaii. The column, which was written by Bob Krause, recounted stories involving the ladies' restroom at the theater. 2 variations of the tale emerged. The first described a girl who went to the restroom at midnight to reapply her lipstick. While looking in the mirror, it said she saw the figure of a woman behind her, faceless and floating above the ground. Panicked, she turned around, but the restroom was all empty. Moments later, the door slammed and locked itself. The girl screamed and fainted, and that was pretty much it. The second version involved a girl encountering another woman combing her long hair in front of the mirror. When she went to greet the woman and be friendly, the figure turned slightly, revealing a blank face. The encounter reportedly left the girl so terrified that she was hospitalized. These accounts were tied to the theater's proximity to a cemetery, which some believed contributed to the occurrences. Albert Silva, the theater manager, dismissed the stories as fabrications, but acknowledged their unexpected popularity. He claimed the tales drew more patrons to the drive-in, both for the films and to experience the rumored haunting. And something interesting is Silva even added that a week before the stories gained traction, a woman had told him her friend encountered a faceless ghost in the restroom, though the friend never came forward with their tale. He believed, though, that the whole thing could have stemmed from local pranksters, specifically a girl known for locking restroom doors or slipping paper beneath stalls to frighten patrons. Then, in the early 1980s, folklorist Glenn Grant revisited Krause's report and categorized the faceless woman stories as an urban legend. He noted that urban legends often follow a pattern where key details remain constant while other elements shift during retellings. In this case, the central theme was the faceless woman, with the surrounding circumstances, such as who witnessed her and what they experienced, varying. Grant pointed out that such stories are frequently told about a friend of a friend, distancing them from direct investigation. However, during a radio appearance in 1982, Grant encountered a caller who challenged his skepticism. The woman claimed that she had personally seen the faceless ghost 2 years earlier at the Waialae Drive-In. She described that she entered the restroom and saw a girl combing her long red hair in front of the mirror. As she approached the figure, she noticed that the girl's face was missing. Terrified, she ran out and her friends found the restroom all empty. This account from someone unaware of the legend prior to her experience complicated Grant's dismissal of the story as mere folklore. While the drive-in was eventually demolished in 1986 to make way for housing development, sightings of the faceless woman still persisted, now in other parts of Oahu. Fast forward to 1989, two mechanics working in the basement of a Honolulu hospital at 1 a.m. encountered a similar figure. They saw a woman in a hospital gown slowly approaching them. Assuming she was a lost patient, one of the men called out to offer assistance. When she tucked her long black hair behind her ears, they realized her head was featureless, appearing as a dark void. Both men immediately fled the area, and one later recounted the incident to Grant, still visibly terrified. Even in late 1990, a couple living on Iwa Beach Road heard the distinct clacking sounds of wooden sandals outside their home. Looking out, they saw an elderly woman in a red kimono with her hair in a bun and carrying a matching umbrella. She walked slowly up their driveway and, as she passed their window, turned to reveal a blank face. The couple shouted in surprise but continued to watch as the figure walked past their car with her umbrella visible through the windows while her body was not. The woman entered their garage and vanished thereafter. The next day, their neighbors confirmed seeing the same figure. The faceless woman was last widely reported in the mid-1990s, though it's unclear if sightings still continue. Grant, who documented these stories until his death in 2003, left behind a collection of accounts. Montana, Langville, Montana. Langville, Montana is a name that has drifted through whispers and online searches, leaving behind a mysterious narrative of a town that reportedly vanished without a trace. Unlike the ghost towns scattered across Montana that still have ruins or remnants, Langville has no physical evidence supporting its existence at all. The story suggests that the town, located somewhere in the rural eastern plains, disappeared entirely sometime in the early 2000s, and the details surrounding this mystery have only added to the interest. Claims about Langville's presence have included sightings on Google Maps, where it was said to have briefly appeared with street views showing what appeared to be a small town. However, when people attempted to locate Langville in person, it couldn't be found. To complicate matters further, no archived maps or screenshots provide evidence of its supposed location. Despite this, over 7 million searches have been recorded for Langville, yet none yield concrete results. Adding to the confusion are reports that Langville's name has occasionally surfaced in Google search autocomplete suggestions. Terms like Langville, Montana disappeared, Langville, Montana incident, and even Langville, Montana turned inside out have been noted by users, though none of these queries produce verifiable information. Some claim this phenomenon is linked to the Mandela effect, which is a theory suggesting collective false memories. Locals in certain areas of Montana, though, insist that Langville was real, sharing vague recollections of its existence and stories of its sudden disappearance. Among the most disturbing aspects of the legend is the claim that the residents of Langville vanished in a gruesome manner, with some accounts suggesting that an unknown force turned the people inside out. These stories, though unsubstantiated, have been a focal point for conspiracy theorists. And the thing is, the story gained more attention with its mention in the recent Ghostbusters movie, where the town is cited alongside other infamous mysteries like the SS Orang Medan. In the film, Agent Rourke refers to Langville as an example of inexplicable events, stating the entire town of Langville, Montana goes missing. While some suggest this reference was a clever marketing tactic, others argue it revived an older legend that had already been circulating among Montana locals and internet forums for years. Skeptics believe Langville is nothing more than a carefully constructed hoax, possibly created to draw tourism or stir up internet speculation. However, those who maintain that Langville really existed often point to the whole absence of evidence as the most telling part of the mystery. Alabama, Spirits of Spring Villa. Spring Villa is a structure that's tied to the region's 19th century development. Constructed around 1851, the house is believed to have been built by William Penn C. Young, who used wealth accumulated during the California Gold Rush to establish a home and business ventures in Alabama. The house's design reflects the Carpenter Gothic style, with steeply pitched gables, detailed wooden millwork, and symmetrical facades. The style, which was popular during the mid-19th century, combines traditional Gothic Revival elements with practical adaptations suitable for American settings. Following Young's death in 1879, his wife, Mary Godwin Young, sold the property. Over time, the land and house changed hands, eventually being acquired by the city of Opelika for use as a water source. In 1934, during the Great Depression, the Civil Works Administration restored the house and developed the grounds into a camp for 4-H programs. The property then was later opened as a public park. But focusing more on the legend and everything, the house's most well-known one involves Young's alleged murder on the staircase by an enslaved individual hiding in a concealed niche. According to the tale, Young was attacked as he climbed the stairs and died on the 13th step. This story, however, is contradicted by historical records. Young's death actually occurred years after the abolition of slavery, and no evidence supports the claim of foul play. Despite this, the legend has still persisted, added by local storytelling and its retelling during the property's use as a 4-H camp. And paranormal reports from Spring Villa kind of vary. Visitors have described things like hearing unexplained sounds, including voices, piano music, and even footsteps. The house, which is unfurnished and in a state of disrepair, contributes to the atmosphere of the whole mystery as well. Some individuals claim to have seen shadowy figures in the windows or experienced a physical sensation of being pushed while ascending the staircase, especially on the infamous 13th step. Several investigations by paranormal research groups have also attempted to document and explain these whole phenomena. The Alabama Paranormal Research Team, for example, has reported electronic voice phenomena, or EVPs, and other audio anomalies. One account involves a camp counselor who witnessed a man playing a piano in the empty house, leaving the witness visibly terrified. Southern Paranormal Research, which is another investigative group, documented experiences ranging from unusual sounds in the surrounding woods to sightings of a shadowy figure on the property's roads. Their findings also include EVPs such as a growl and what sounded like a child's laughter. In addition to the house, the property's lakes are rumored to be linked to the deaths of 3 young girls who drowned under unknown circumstances. These incidents are often cited as contributing to the site's reputation for unexplained activity. California, Riverside Monster. The Riverside Monster, which is sometimes referred to as the Riverside Bridge Monster or the Brain Tickler of Riverside, is a cryptid that was reportedly encountered by Charles Wetzel near the Santa Ana River in Riverside, California on November 8, 1958. The creature was described as tall and thin with a distinctive protuberant mouth, glowing green eyes, and an unusual physical appearance that included scaly, leaf-like skin and legs that extended sideways from its body. This strange encounter remains the primary account associated with the creature, as no other significant sightings have been reported beyond the initial incident and a related encounter the following night. Charles Wetzel was driving near the North Main Street Bridge over the Santa Ana River when he encountered the creature. Heavy rain had caused the river to overflow, partially covering the road. As Wetzel approached the flooded area, his car radio abruptly filled with static, which he later described as a strange prelude to the events that followed. Then, out of the dense underbrush, a bizarre figure leaped directly in front of his car. Wetzel provided a detailed description of the creature, noting its scarecrow-like head, disproportionately long arms, and a round face devoid of any ears. Its eyes emitted an eerie fluorescent glow, and its legs, oddly positioned, protruded sideways. Wetzel also remarked on its skin, which he compared to scaly foliage. Then the creature immediately began clawing at the car's windshield, emitting high-pitched screeches as it attacked. Wetzel, feeling vulnerable despite having a .22 caliber pistol in his vehicle, opted not to risk opening the window to confront the creature. Instead, he accelerated, hitting the creature and sending it tumbling beneath the car. He reported feeling the impact of the creature's body scraping along the underside of the vehicle, accompanied by gurgling noises and continued screeching. Without stopping to investigate further, Wetzel drove directly to the Riverside police station to report the whole incident. At the station, officers inspected the vehicle and observed scratches on the hood and windshield, as well as smeared marks along the car's oil-coated undercarriage. These physical signs lent credibility to Wetzel's account. Police then dispatched bloodhounds to the scene, but no trace of the creature was ever found. The following night, another driver reported a similar experience near the same location, although details of this second encounter were not as extensively documented. After these two incidents, though, there were no additional reports of the Riverside monster. Colorado, the Hotel Colorado. The Hotel Colorado, located in Glenwood Springs, Colorado, has a long history filled with interesting and unexplained events. Opened in 1893, the hotel was designed as a luxurious retreat modeled after grand Italian resorts of the Gilded Age. It featured amenities such as a Victorian garden, tennis courts, and an indoor waterfall, and a massive 185-foot fountain. Over the years, the hotel has served various purposes, including operating as a U.S. Naval convalescent hospital during World War II, a time when many of the stories of its hauntings are believed to have originated. The basement of the hotel has been the setting for numerous accounts of unexplained phenomena. During its time as a naval hospital, the basement was used as a morgue, which has fueled stories of ghostly encounters in this part of the building. In one notable incident in 1993, an employee named Dave witnessed an old woman peering into the basement through a window. The window itself was accessible only by a deep well that required a ladder to reach. Concerned for her safety, Dave crossed the room to turn on a light, but when he looked back, the woman had vanished. Another incident involved a security guard named Richard who was giving the nighttime tour near the office of the executive housekeeper. Richard and his group reported hearing two women speaking and the sound of a typewriter in a nearby room. Upon investigation, though, they found that the room was empty and there was no typewriter present at all. On the main floor too, one of the most discussed apparitions is that of Bobby, which is a nurse who allegedly worked at the hotel during its time as a naval hospital. According to local lore, Bobby was murdered by a jealous naval officer who had developed an unhealthy obsession with her. Guests and employees have since reported sightings of a woman in a military uniform, particularly in the dining room during meal times. Some have even described smelling the scent of a vintage perfume identified as gardenia, which was popular in the 1930s and 1940s but is no longer manufactured. Another frequently mentioned spirit is Walter, named after the hotel's founder, Walter Devereux. Walter's presence is often associated with the smell of cigar smoke, even though smoking has been prohibited inside the building for decades. Some speculate that Walter might actually be the spirit of E.E. Lucas, which is the hotel's bookkeeper turned general manager who eventually owned the property. Lucas managed the hotel alongside his wife until his death in 1927, and many believe his strong connection to the building may explain his lingering presence. Certain guest rooms in the hotel are also tied to paranormal events, with room 661 being one of the most notable. Basically, in 1993, a couple staying in the suite reported strange occurrences during their visit. The husband had fallen ill, prompting his wife to open the windows to allow fresh air into the room. Each time she left the suite, the windows would be mysteriously shut by an unknown force. The couple also claimed to have seen a woman enter the room and instruct them to keep the windows closed, stating that the husband needed to stay out of the draft. Many other guests have also reported seeing a woman standing over their beds in the same room, often described as wearing a floral dress. West Virginia, the Ridgeway Ghost. The Ridgeway Ghost, who is also known as the Ridgeway Phantom, is a figure rooted in the folklore of southwest Wisconsin. It's said to haunt a stretch of US Route 151 between Dodgeville and Blue Mounds, a roughly 20-mile area lined with farmland. Ridgeway itself, which is a small town with a population of about 600 people, has been home to this tale since the mid-19th century. The Ridgeway Ghost is unique in ghost lore because it's rumored to have been responsible for the deaths of some who encountered it. The ghost has achieved kinda local notoriety, even earning a spot painted on the town's water tower. The origins of the Ridgeway Ghost, though, are steeped in mystery, and the lack of official records has allowed oral tradition to preserve its story. The region had saw an influx of settlers in the 1830s, particularly Irish, Welsh, Norwegian, and German immigrants who came to work in lead mines. During this period, the area was known for lawlessness, with daily reports of violence in saloons in the wilderness. Sightings of the Ridgeway Ghost then began in the mid-1800s, and the ghost has been described in many forms. It's said to have the ability to change shape, appearing variously as a man with a whip, a dog, a pig, a ball of fire, a headless horseman, and even a young woman. Reports consistently describe the ghost materializing suddenly, attacking or frightening travelers, and then just vanishing. And a notable feature of the ghost's appearance is its periodic increase in activity, with claims that sightings spike every 40 years, beginning in the 1850s. One of the earliest documented accounts involves Dr. Cutler of Dodgeville, who reportedly saw the ghost 3 times. The third encounter is said to have frightened him so badly that he died shortly afterward. Another story tells of John Lewis, a man who encountered a large, dark figure while walking home. According to Lewis, the entity picked him up and tossed him around like a tornado before leaving him semi-conscious. He died a few hours after sharing the details of his experience. Other accounts collected by local storytellers and organizations like the Wisconsin Folklore Society describe similar encounters. One involves ghostly hands playing poker, while another recounts a farmer being frightened by a massive ghostly pig, leading to his death shortly afterward. These stories often feature themes of violent or pretty disturbing encounters. But yeah, about the origins of the ghost itself, it's kind of debated, with several theories attempting to explain its presence. One popular tale claims that 2 teenage brothers were murdered at a saloon in the 1840s, one burned alive in a fireplace and the other freezing to death while fleeing the scene. Another version involves an unnamed man killed in a bar fight during the same period. Some speculate the ghost might be linked to a man murdered during the lead mining boom, as referenced in a 1902 article in the New York Times. Yet another theory suggests the ghost was a fabricated story meant to scare troublemakers out of town in the 1850s. None of these stories have actually been verified though. And last thing I wanted to add is Ridgeway itself has a pretty rich history, including a fire in 1913 that destroyed much of its downtown area. Some claim that the ghost left town after the fire, but others argue that its sightings have still persisted despite this. Massachusetts, the Black Flash of Provincetown. The Black Flash is a figure reported to have terrorized Provincetown, Massachusetts in the late 1930s and early 1940s. Accounts describe the Black Flash as an unusually tall figure standing about 8 feet in height and dressed entirely in black, including a long black cape and hood. Some reports added some disturbing features as well, like glowing silver eyes and long metallic ears. The first reports of the Black Flash surfaced in the fall of 1938, primarily from children who claimed to see the figure lurking in the dunes or hiding behind trees. Initially dismissed as the product of overactive imaginations, these reports gained credibility when adults began encountering the figure. One of the most notable incidents involved Maria Costa, who reported being chased by the Black Flash near Town Hall in October 1938. According to her account, the figure emitted a buzzing noise resembling that of a large insect and then proceeded to pursue her. Costa ended up fleeing to a nearby coffee shop. Despite efforts to locate the entity, it vanished without a trace. And another encounter involved a teenage boy claiming that the Black Flash had jumped out at him and spit blue flames. He fled to the police station in tears, reporting his terrifying experience. And in another case, Charles Farley saw the figure in his backyard and even attempted to shoot it with a shotgun. The Black Flash though reportedly laughed off the attack, leaping effortlessly over an 8-foot fence and disappearing. This ability to jump over tall obstacles led some to suggest that the figure had springs in its shoes, a characteristic echoed in other urban legends like England's Spring-Heeled Jack. The police were also drawn into the mystery. On one occasion, officers responded to reports of the Black Flash in a school playground surrounded by a high fence. Entering with flashlights and weapons, the officers claimed to see the figure up close. One officer noted that the Flash's face appeared to be a silver painted mask. When ordered to surrender, the figure simply laughed and vaulted over the 10-foot fence, evading capture once again. The legend reached its peak in the 1930s and early 1940s though. Its supposed final sighting occurred in December 1945 when 4 children from the Jannard family saw the figure creeping toward them through a foggy yard. They described hearing the Flash attempt to turn their doorknobs, and the oldest child, Alan, dumped a bucket of hot water on the Flash from a second-story window, prompting it to retreat. The Black Flash was even mentioned in local newspapers during its initial wave of sightings. A 1939 article in the Provincetown Advocate referred to the figure and its antics, though it suggested that the reports were exaggerated tales born of cabin fever. A follow-up piece later that year reported that the police chief denied any current sightings and declared the Flash dead and gone. New Mexico, the Staircase of Loretto. The story of the Loretto Chapel staircase revolves around its construction and the mysterious carpenter who built it. A little background is that the staircase itself is located in Santa Fe, New Mexico, and is pretty renowned for its unique design, which is a helix-shaped spiral completing 2 full 360 degrees turns in a limited space. What sets it apart is the absence of visible central support and the use of wooden pegs instead of nails, a feat that continues to baffle architects and engineers. In the late 19th century, the Sisters of Loretto, a Catholic religious order, faced a significant problem during the construction of their Gothic Revival-style chapel. While the chapel featured stunning stained glass windows imported from France and locally sourced sandstone, it lacked a staircase to the choir loft. For the nuns, using a ladder was both impractical and unsafe. Local carpenters ended up deeming it impossible to construct a staircase in the tight space without interfering with the chapel's design. With no solution in sight, the sisters turned to prayer. They performed a novena, a 9-day devotional practice dedicated to Saint Joseph, the patron saint of carpenters. On the final day, as the story goes, a man appeared with a donkey and a toolbox, offering to build the staircase. He asked only for privacy and tubs of hot water for soaking the wood. After months of solitary work, he presented the sisters with the completed staircase, then disappeared without requesting payment or revealing his identity. The staircase itself consists of 33 steps, a number that some interpret as symbolizing the age of Jesus at his death. Its design defied conventional methods of the time with no visible central support beam, and yet it has still remained structurally sound. Initially, the staircase lacked a handrail, which was added years later. The identity of the craftsman, though, still remains a mystery. Many believe that the carpenter was Saint Joseph himself, answering the sisters' prayers. Others, though, propose more earthly explanations. For example, historian Mary J. Straw Cook theorized that Francois-Jean Frenchy Roches, a local woodworker, was responsible. Her argument relied on an 1895 newspaper article describing Roches as a skilled carpenter and a logbook entry from 1881 recording a payment for wood. However, the timing of the payment, which was 3 years after the staircase's completion, kinda cast doubt on this theory. Other claims suggest the craftsman was J.H. Rogers, who purportedly built the staircase as an act of penance. But adding to the mystery is even the origin of the wood used itself. In 1996, Forrest N. Easley, a retired wood technologist, identified the wood as spruce, but noted it didn't match any species native to the region. He suggested naming it Loretto spruce, as its exact type remains unknown. So yeah, today the staircase continues to interest visitors and researchers and is pretty much still, a mystery. Nevada, the Ghost of Gold Hill. The Gold Hill Hotel in Gold Hill, Nevada is one of the oldest operating hotels in the state, dating back to the 1850s. Located near the historic Comstock Lode mining area, the hotel is tied to the boom and bust cycles of the mining era that defined much of Nevada's early history. The Comstock Lode, discovered in 1859, brought a rush of miners, fortune seekers, and businesses to the region, establishing Gold Hill and nearby Virginia City as hubs of economic activity. The Gold Hill Hotel served as a lodging space for many of these individuals, becoming a part of the area's story of wealth, ambition, and eventual decline. Constructed from local stone, the building reflects the practical yet enduring architectural style of its time. But yeah, onto the legends. Room number 2 of the hotel has gained particular attention because of persistent reports of paranormal activity linked to a spirit known as Rosie. Guests and staff alike have recounted unexplainable experiences, with one of the most frequently reported phenomena being a sudden and overwhelming smell of roses. Richard Cheney, a paranormal investigator, described his experience while staying in the room. While relaxing in the clawfoot bathtub, he encountered the powerful scent of roses that seemed to fill the bathroom entirely. Despite a thorough search of the room, no source of the fragrance could be found. The scent vanished as quickly as it appeared, only to return later in the night. But yeah, the association with such a phenomena in the room has led many to believe that Rosie's spirit continues to linger. While there's no definitive historical records to actually identify her, some speculate she might have been connected to the hotel during its earlier years, possibly as a guest or employee who left an emotional imprint on the space. But beyond room number 2, the hotel and its surrounding area also have some tales of hauntings and unexplained occurrences. The Comstock Lode itself was the site of numerous tragedies, including mine collapses, fire, and violent altercations. Gold Hill and even nearby Virginia City are widely regarded as hotspots for paranormal activity, with many buildings in the region hosting similar stories of ghostly encounters. Arkansas, the Gurdon Lights. So this story began on December 3rd, 1931, when a freight train derailed near Gurdon, Arkansas, when someone tampered with the rails. Officials believe that the sabotage targeted the Sunshine Special, which is a passenger train that traveled at high speeds. The next day, Will McLean, a section foreman for the Missouri Pacific Railroad, was reported missing by his wife. The city marshal's investigation led to Louis McBride, a laborer under McLean's supervision, whose suspicious behavior prompted questioning. McBride confessed to murdering McLean and guided authorities to the crime scene. McLean's body was then discovered near the tracks, marked by a blood trail stretching a quarter mile into nearby swampy woods. He had been fatally beaten with a spike maul and shovel, suffering multiple severe blows to the head. Evidence suggested he tried to crawl out of the woods before succumbing to his injuries. but according to accounts, McLean's lantern was still clutched in his hand when he was found. McBride admitted to the murder, citing anger over being denied seniority rights during layoffs. He was then convicted and executed by electrocution on July 8, 1932. Soon after the murder, though, reports of an unexplained light began to emerge. The Gurdon light, described as a yellowish-white or bluish orb hovering above the railroad tracks, appeared along a 4-mile stretch near the site of McLean's death. Witnesses noted its unusual behavior, disappearing and reappearing unpredictably, sometimes behind those walking the tracks. The surrounding swampy woods and an old cemetery also added to the whole eerie atmosphere. But theories attempting to explain the light include the piezoelectric effect, where stress on quartz crystals beneath the tracks generates an electric glow. This explanation aligns with Gurdon's location near the New Madrid seismic zone. Earlier theories like car headlights or swamp gas have been largely dismissed because of the timeline of sightings and geographical barriers. And something to add to is longtime investigator Mike Klingon, who extensively studied the phenomenon, documented unusual experiences during his investigations. He observed groups of people seemingly vanish, witnessed a bluish mist hovering above the tracks, and even reported hearing unexplained voices and shuffling sounds. On one occasion, he and others experienced an unshakable sense of dread in the area. But yeah, while some believe the light is tied to McLean's murder, others argue its origins predate the event, with local legends suggesting the light was known to Native Americans and early settlers. North Carolina, Teach's Light. So this is one of my favorite ones, and it revolves around Blackbeard, who was the infamous pirate also known as Edward Teach. Blackbeard, who was a notorious figure in the early 18th century piracy era, was both feared and admired for his daring exploits and larger-than-life persona. Known for his fearsome appearance, he would weave slow-burning fuses into his iconic black beard during battles to create a menacing aura of smoke and fire. His reputation alone often caused his adversaries to surrender without even a fight, though historical accounts suggest his reign of terror may have involved less bloodshed than his image implied. Blackbeard's violent end then came on November 22, 1718, during a naval battle with Lieutenant Robert Maynard of the Royal Navy at a site now known as Teach's Hole. The confrontation, which was a culmination of efforts to end his piracy, saw Blackbeard fiercely defending his position until he was eventually overwhelmed. Accounts describe him sustaining at least 5 gunshot wounds and over 20 cuts before he was finally subdued. After his death, his head was severed from his body and displayed on Maynard's ship as proof of victory, while his body was thrown into the waters near Qupqugiaq Island. According to legend, Blackbeard's headless body swam around Maynard's ship 3 times before vanishing into the depths. Not long after his death, reports of an unexplained light in the waters of Teach's Hole began to surface. This mysterious glow, often referred to as Teach's Light, has been observed beneath the water or along the shoreline at night. Witnesses describe it as a faint, floating illumination that appears to drift before fading into darkness. It's widely believed to represent Blackbeard's restless spirit eternally searching for his missing head. The legend is further enhanced by claims that during stormy nights, his ghostly voice can be heard in the wind, repeatedly asking, "Where's my head?" This cry has basically solidified Teach's Hole as a location steeped in ghostly lore. Some claim though that the light's appearance correlates with certain environmental conditions like the phases of the moon or changes in weather, which has kinda only deepened the mystery. Some claim though that the light's appearance correlates with certain environmental conditions like the phases of the moon or changes in weather. Maine, Curse of the Saco River. The Saco River, which winds through New Hampshire and Maine before emptying into the Atlantic Ocean, is the subject of a legend dating back centuries. The tale originates with Squando, a chief of the Saco tribe, whose wife and infant son reportedly fell victim to a cruel and fatal incident involving English sailors. According to one version of the story, 3 drunken sailors seeking to prove a claim that Native American infants could instinctively swim seized Squando's child and threw him into the river. Though the mother retrieved her baby, he died days later, prompting Squando to curse the river. The curse, as told in legend, decreed that the river would claim the lives of 3 white people each year. But alternative accounts suggest that the tragedy occurred near Leamington, Maine, involving a chief's daughter rather than Squando's son. In this version, 3 settlers kidnapped the girl, who fell from their canoe and drowned into the turbulent waters of the Leamington Rips. The chief's resulting curse ensured that the river would extract an annual toll in human lives. Despite variations in the details though, the legend's core still remains the same, that the Saco River became a site of recurring loss. Modern reports suggest the curse's effects persist, with locals claiming an average of 3 drownings per year along the river's 135-mile stretch. These accounts often recall unexplained accidents, strong currents, and hidden undertows that create dangerous conditions. Some attribute the drownings to the river's natural hazards, such as unpredictable currents rather than supernatural causes, though many in the region maintain a deep respect for the curse. Anecdotes from longtime residents and historians reinforce the tale's enduring presence in local memory, with some sharing personal experiences of near drownings or tragic incidents that align with the curse's alleged pattern. And one especially disturbing aspect of the curse is its emphasis on 3 lives per year. While the accuracy of this claim is debated, some residents cite personal or familial encounters with the river's dangers as evidence of the curse's validity. Stories range from close calls with drowning to unexplained phenomena, like glowing lights seen beneath the water or eerie sensations felt by those who narrowly escaped the river's grip. These tales, passed down through generations, blend historical tragedy with cultural lore, reinforcing the river's whole dark reputation. Idaho, Fishwoman of Lake Coeur d'Alene. The Fishwoman of Lake Coeur d'Alene is a figure from the folklore of the region, especially among the Native American tribes who have long inhabited the area surrounding the lake in Idaho. The legend describes a creature that combines human and fish features, often seen as a half-woman, half-fish entity associated with the lake's waters. This tale has been passed down through generations and remains a part of local cultural narratives. Lake Coeur d'Alene itself has held spiritual and cultural significance for indigenous communities for centuries. Many tribes regarded bodies of water as dwelling places for powerful, mysterious forces, and the lake was no exception. The Fishwoman is also part of a broader tradition of water mysteries, which are supernatural stories that explain unusual phenomena or serve as cautionary tales. In the case of the Fishwoman though, the legend is often tied to a large pointed rock near the shore, where she is said to sit and gaze across the water. Her presence is sometimes interpreted as protective, watching over the lake and observing the activities of people nearby. There's also been numerous accounts that describe encounters with the Fishwoman. Witnesses have reported seeing a figure with human-like features blended with those of a fish, often sitting on rocks or partially submerged in the water. Others have mentioned just hearing unexplained noises such as faint singing or echoes attributed to her. In some instances, individuals have described feeling sudden, inexplicable chills or noticing gusts of wind that arise without warning, suggesting her proximity. These reports contribute to an ongoing sense of mystery surrounding the whole lake. Fast forward to now, during Halloween or similar occasions, the legend becomes a focal point for storytelling, with many drawn to the idea of supernatural beings connected to the lake. The legend has also been linked to a broader theme of humanity's relationship with nature, as it emphasizes the mysterious and untamed aspects of the lake. Michigan, ghost town of Pere, Cheney. Pere, Cheney, Michigan is a ghost town that carries a significant place in the history of Crawford County. Established in 1873, the village grew around the sawmill of George M. Cheney, who received a land grant from the Michigan Central Railroad. Located in Beaver Creek Township, the community was positioned to support the region's lumber industry. Then, by the mid-1870s, Pere Cheney was home to an estimated 1,500 residents with a general store, carpenters, sawmills, a post office, a hotel featuring telegraph services, and even a station on the Michigan Central Railroad. Despite its early promise, the village's decline began in the late 19th century. Diphtheria outbreaks in 1893 and 1897 devastated the population, reducing the number of residents significantly. By 1901, only 25 people remained in the once thriving community. Then, by 1917, the population had dwindled further to just 18 individuals, leading to the town being declared abandoned. Land in the area was sold off at public auction, and the post office, a key community institution, closed its doors in 1912. Today, Pere Cheney is considered a ghost town, with only remnants of its structures and a cemetery to mark its existence. Pere Cheney's reputation as a ghost town has also grown over the years, fueled by local legends and eerie occurrences. The Pere Cheney Cemetery, for example, where at least 90 individuals were buried, has become a focal point for tales of supernatural activity. Visitors have reported hearing disembodied voices, seeing glowing orbs, and experiencing unexplained phenomena like children's laughter and handprints appearing on vehicles. And the cemetery, located along an unmarked two-track road near the site of the former village, has been heavily vandalized over the years, with most headstones destroyed or damaged. One of the most persistent legends associated with Pere Cheney is that of a witch who is said to have cursed the village. According to this tale, the witch was banished to the woods and buried in the cemetery after her death. A now lost red headstone was supposedly her grave marker. Some believe the witch's curse is the reason behind the town's outbreaks of disease and its ultimate demise. However, there's no concrete historical evidence to actually support these claims, making them part of the folklore that surrounds the site. The decline of Pere Cheney has also been attributed to its geographical location. Some accounts suggest that the town was built on swampy, low-lying land, making it prone to the spread of disease. Others point to tensions with neighboring communities, with unverified reports suggesting that nearby townspeople may have burned parts of Pere Cheney to prevent the disease from spreading. Efforts to restore the Pere Cheney Cemetery have been undertaken in recent years, with local authorities aiming to preserve what remains of the site and its historical significance. A sign has even been installed at the cemetery's entrance detailing its history and providing rules for respectful visitation. Florida Sunshine Skyway Ghost. The Sunshine Skyway Bridge in Tampa Bay, Florida is known not only for its architectural significance, but also for its association with one of the most tragic events in the region's history. Spanning lower Tampa Bay, the bridge connects St. Petersburg and Terracea, serving as a major transportation artery. However, its legacy is marred by the catastrophic collapse on May 9, 1980, and the numerous ghost stories that have emerged since. The original Sunshine Skyway Bridge was constructed in 1954 by the Virginia Bridge Company as a two-lane structure. Then, by 1969, a parallel bridge was added to bridge the roadway up to the modern highway standards, creating a four-lane span. However, the construction faced issues, including cracks in the southern main pier, which ended up delaying the opening of the improved structure until 1971. Then, less than a decade later, the bridge would be the site of a devastating accident. On the morning of May 9, 1980, the freighter MV Summit Venture, guided by Captain John Larrow, was navigating Tampa Bay under severe weather conditions. Heavy rain and high winds reduced visibility to nearly zero, and the ship's radar was rendered useless by the storm. Despite efforts to stop the ship, including reversing its engines and deploying an emergency anchor, the Summit Venture collided with two of the bridge's support piers. This impact caused over 1,200 feet of the bridge to collapse, sending 6 cars, a Greyhound bus, and a pickup truck into the waters below. 35 people lost their lives in the disaster, leaving only one survivor, Wesley McIntyre, whose pickup truck landed on the freighter's hull before sinking. In the aftermath of the collapse, a new bridge was developed and opened in 1987. It was renamed the Bob Graham Sunshine Skyway Bridge in honor of the governor at the time. Despite the construction of the new bridge, though, the tragedy left behind a legacy of ghostly tales. Many locals and visitors claim that the spirits of the 35 victims still haunt the area. Drivers crossing the bridge have reported seeing phantom figures, unexplained lights, and even spectral vehicles. And one especially notable story involves a phantom Greyhound bus dripping water and appearing in the early morning fog. Witnesses describe seeing ghostly passengers inside, including a woman who waves at passing drivers before vanishing. Wesley McIntyre, the sole survivor of the collapse, also reported haunting experiences. He described recurring nightmares in which a young girl floated toward him underwater, only to scream silently when he tried to help her. He claimed that her apparition would later appear beside his bed, leaving a pool of water on the floor. These experiences ended up haunting him for years, adding a deeply personal dimension to the whole legend. Oregon. Battery Russel's Ghost Soldier. So, Fort Stevens, which is located in Clatsop County, Oregon, is a site that has a lot of history behind it and is known for its military significance as well as its ghostly lore. Established during the Civil War in 1863 and operational through World War II, the fort served as a key coastal defense installation. And despite its lack of direct involvement in combat fatalities, Fort Stevens has become associated with tales of lingering spirits, unexplained phenomena, and mysterious encounters. Fort Stevens was first constructed to protect the mouth of the Columbia River and was also initially called the Fort at Point Adams. Its name was later changed in honor of Isaac Stevens, who was a former governor of Washington Territory who died during the Civil War. Although the Civil War ended before the fort was completed, it remained a key defensive site for decades. Then, in the late 19th century, the Army Corps of Engineers used the location to support the construction of the Columbia River Channel. By 1896, the fort was modernized with reinforced concrete gun batteries, including Battery Russel, to defend against potential threats. During World War II, Fort Stevens even played a crucial role in coastal defense. On June 21, 1942, a Japanese submarine fired 17 shells at the fort. While the attack caused no casualties or any significant damage, it marked a rare instance of enemy fire on US soil during the war. But yeah, I won't really get into too much detail because, we gotta focus on the legend here. But yeah, despite the absence of recorded battle deaths at Fort Stevens, there's been numerous reports of paranormal activity that have emerged over the years. Visitors and campers have reported encounters with ghostly figures, especially those resembling soldiers from World War II. These apparitions are often seen in full military uniform wandering the grounds of the fort and nearby areas. One common story involves a spectral soldier seen patrolling the area at night, sometimes holding a flashlight. Witnesses claim that the figure disappears when approached, and in one account, a camper heard the crunching of boots on gravel outside his tent. The next morning, the camper found boot prints outside the campsite, leading to speculation that the ghost of a soldier had been on patrol. Another notable sighting as well occurred along the shoreline near the fort. A visitor described encountering a man in an old military uniform, and the two exchanged nods, but when the visitor turned to look back at who it was, the man had vanished. Later, the visitor identified the soldier from a historical photograph on display at a museum dedicated to Fort Stevens. In addition to full-bodied apparitions, many visitors have reported seeing glowing orbs of light around the battery and other parts of the fort. Paranormal enthusiasts believe that these orbs might represent the spirits of soldiers who once served at Fort Stevens. On clear nights, some witnesses even claim that the orbs are so numerous that they resemble stars in the sky. Other reports include unexplained sounds such as the clinking of metal, whispers, and even distant gunfire. Some visitors have also experienced sudden cold spots or just a general feeling of being watched. And the origins of these sightings are kinda a debate among paranormal researchers. Some believe that the spirits are not tied to specific deaths at the fort, but are instead drawn to the location because of its emotional significance. Others suggest that the ghosts may have traveled from other sites where soldiers lost their lives, choosing Fort Stevens as a place of refuge or connection. Georgia, Old Green Eyes. The legend of Old Green Eyes originates from the Chickamauga battlefield in Georgia, which is a location known for its bloody history during the Civil War. The battlefield was the site of a very crucial confrontation in September 1863, when Confederate and Union forces clashed over control of Chattanooga, a vital transportation hub. The two-day battle resulted in about 37,000 casualties, making it one of the bloodiest conflicts of the Civil War. The lingering trauma and death associated with the battle have contributed to numerous ghostly tales reported in the area, with Old Green Eyes being the most well-known. So yeah, the origins of Old Green Eyes are mixed in both Civil War lore and some older legends. Some accounts describe the entity as a soldier who lost his head in battle, doomed to wander the battlefield in search of his body. Others suggest, though, it's sort of a more ancient, otherworldly being with roots in Native American folklore, predating the war itself. Descriptions of Old Green Eyes depict a figure with glowing green or greenish-orange eyes, long, stringy hair, and a grotesque, fang-filled jaw. These traits give it a sort of half-man, half-beast appearance. One of the earliest documented sightings occurred shortly after the battle when witnesses reported a creature with glowing eyes moving among the corpses on Snodgrass Hill, which was a key location during the whole conflict. Then, over the years, visitors and park rangers at Chickamauga National Military Park have continued to report encounters with this entity. Some describe seeing glowing green eyes in the darkness, while others recount sightings of a shadowy humanoid figure that vanishes without a trace. And one notable account I'd like to add came from Edward Tinney, a park ranger who had an encounter in 1976. Tinney was patrolling the battlefield in the early morning hours when he felt a sudden chill out of nowhere. Moments later, a figure with glowing green eyes emerged from the darkness. Tinney described the creature as having long hair and sharp fang-like teeth. Before he could even react, the headlights of an approaching car illuminated the area, causing the entity to completely vanish. Other incidents as well involved drivers passing through the battlefield. In the 1970s, two separate accidents occurred when drivers swerved off the road after seeing glowing green eyes. These lights were often described as floating orbs resembling eyes rather than traditional headlights. Such reports have kept the legend alive and seen it as a more haunting presence associated with the battlefield's dark history. The battlefield itself is also a hotspot for paranormal activity beyond just the legend of Old Green Eyes. Visitors frequently report hearing disembodied voices, the sounds of marching soldiers, gunfire, and even the cries of the wounded. Many attribute these phenomena to the large number of soldiers buried in unmarked graves throughout the area. One of the most famous spirits apart from Old Green Eyes is called the Lady in White, believed to be a woman searching for her husband who died in the battle. Virginia, Elbow Road. Elbow Road, which is a winding two-lane stretch that connects Chesapeake to Virginia Beach, Virginia, is infamous for its hazardous conditions and numerous accidents, as well as some ghostly tales that have emerged from its troubled history. The road has earned a reputation as one of the most dangerous and allegedly haunted locations in the area. Even after efforts to improve its infrastructure, Elbow Road remains a source of fear for drivers, locals, and even just those intrigued by its stories. And it's the physical characteristics of Elbow Road that contribute a lot to its dangers. Before renovations in 2016, the road lacked any shoulders, streetlights, and adequate safety measures, making it especially treacherous at night or during any adverse weather conditions. Drivers had to face sharp, unexpected curves that were really difficult to navigate, especially when traveling at the posted speed limit of 45 miles per hour. These features led to numerous accidents, some of which even resulted in fatalities. Even with the recent improvements, including widened lanes and added shoulders, the road's dangers still persist, especially during heavy rains or icy conditions when the curves and narrow lanes continue to challenge drivers. So yeah, this background knowledge of, the high accident rate has made it a focal point of local news over the years. In the first few months of 2012 alone, 45 crashes were reported. These incidents were said to often leave lasting scars on the community, especially for residents living along the road, who frequently witness and hear the aftermath of collisions. Many have grown accustomed to the sound of crashes interrupting the quiet of the night, and have seen firsthand the tragic consequences, such as drivers being ejected from their own vehicles. For some, these experiences have fueled tales of ghostly apparitions and other paranormal occurrences. Two ghost stories especially stand out as the most enduring legends associated with Elbow Road. The first is the tale of the drowned girl. Basically, she's said to be the spirit of a young child who perished in one of the nearby lakes along the road. The story lacks kinda specific details such as the name or age of the girl or the exact lake where she drowned, which has left it firmly in the realm of urban legend. According to the tale though, those who park their car on the roadside at night and sit on the hood may see muddy footprints appear, as if the girl is approaching. This story has deterred some from venturing onto the road at night, though its authenticity remains unverified. Then the other one is the legend of Mrs. Wobble, which is a sort of darker twist. Mrs. Wobble is said to have lived near one of the road's sharp curves before she was brutally murdered under mysterious circumstances. The story goes that police found a broken door, a meal left untouched on the table, and a gruesome scene upstairs where blood was discovered but no body was ever found. Mrs. Wobble's ghost then is believed to wander the road, and witnesses have reported seeing a blood-covered woman walking along the roadside. This has led to speculation that her apparition may contribute to some of the accidents, as drivers swerve to avoid what they believe is a person in distress. And something to add is the name Wobble is actually elbow spelled backward, which has led skeptics to question the story's authenticity. However, sightings of strange lights flickering in the area where her house once stood have kept the legend alive. Some attribute these lights to the reflection of car headlights, while others believe they signify a ghostly presence, or even just a phantom version of Mrs. Wobble's former home. Indiana, Moody's Light. Moody's Light is a ghost light phenomenon tied to the rural area between Rensselaer and Francisville, Indiana. The legend basically centers on a mysterious light that appears along a gravel road, often described as glowing with colors ranging from orange to green. Witnesses have reported the light moving unpredictably through the cornfields. And the story of Moody's Light is actually tied to a tragic narrative involving a farmer named Moody, who once lived in a nearby farmhouse with his wife and 2 daughters. According to the legend, Moody returned home one evening to find that his family was brutally murdered. Despite investigations by local authorities, the crime remained unsolved. Grief-stricken and consumed by despair, Moody allowed his farm to deteriorate and eventually took his own life by hanging himself from a tree on his own property. Locals believe then that the mysterious light represents Moody's restless spirit, eternally searching the fields for his family's killer. The light's manifestation is described as lantern-like, glowing with shifting colors that alternate between orange, red, and green. It's often seen moving in the distance, changing size and intensity as it hovers, or even just drifts near the site of Moody's former property. Witnesses report that the light also appears intelligent, evading attempts to approach it and just disappearing when pursued. Some describe it as even splitting into multiple lights, which merge again into a singular glow. This behavior has led to various interpretations, like theories of ghostly activity, swamp gas emissions, or just unexplained natural phenomena. Accounts of experiences with Moody's light vary in detail, but the sightings are often consistent enough to, keep the legend alive. One witness described visiting the location in 2003 on a clear, breezy night. They followed local tradition by flashing their car headlights 3 times near a tree stump believed to be tied to the story. A glowing orange light then appeared in the distance, intermittently vanishing and reappearing. Observing through binoculars, the group noted that the light sometimes split into multiple points of illumination before converging again. And despite their efforts to approach the light, it maintained its distance and eluded explanation. Another account describes a visit to Moody Road where witnesses encountered a yellowish light resembling an old-fashioned lantern. This light slowly advanced toward them, followed by a green light that exhibited similar behavior. The lights appeared to crest a small hill in the road, only to disappear when pursued. The road then ends abruptly in a field with no apparent source for the light. And to focus more on local encounters with nearby residents, one group seeking the location stopped at an old church that had been converted into a home to ask for directions. The elderly woman who answered the door warned them against visiting, describing the area as evil. Despite the warnings, the group proceeded and experienced the unexplained lights firsthand, leaving with more questions than answers. Skeptics have offered alternative explanations for the whole thing, including the possibility that the light comes from distant vehicle headlights on nearby highways, reflections from glass or water, or just natural occurrences like swamp gas. However, these theories fail to account for the light's apparent ability to move, change colors, and disappear on command, so it's still a bit of a mystery and a pretty interesting urban legend altogether. Texas. Ghost Cows of Farm Road 511. The ghost cows of Farm Road 511 in Brownsville, Texas, are among the region's more unusual urban legends. These apparitions are said to haunt this road, causing confusion and accidents for unsuspecting drivers who don't know any better. The road itself is a relatively normal stretch by day, but it's said that at night it becomes the setting for really disturbing encounters with phantom bovines. Numerous reports from locals and travelers alike describe sudden, startling appearances of ghostly cows in the middle of the road. The accounts often include descriptions of these cows materializing directly in the path of an oncoming vehicle, leading drivers to swerve abruptly to avoid them. But upon closer inspection, there really isn't any evidence of any living creature present. Farm Road 511 is actually well traveled, but its reputation as a site of strange phenomena has persisted for decades. Those who claim to have encountered the ghost cows describe seeing a large animal appear suddenly in the glow of their headlights, typically just feet away from their vehicles. The instinctive reaction to avoid the perceived obstacle often results in drivers, just veering off the road, sometimes causing accidents. In many cases, though, people have just exited their vehicles to search for the animal that they believe they nearly hit, only to find that there's no trace of it. This has led to speculation that the cows are some kind of spectral entities, leaving no physical evidence of their presence. The origins of the legend also kind of remain unclear. There's not any historical records or specific events that seem to anchor the story to a particular time or incident. However, the consistent nature of the reports has fueled ongoing local interest in the phenomenon. Drivers passing through the area late at night are often advised to remain vigilant, both for the real hazards of a rural road and the potential for the supernatural encounters. Though no notable first-hand accounts are widely documented, the collective anecdotes from those who claim to have experienced the ghost cows paint an interesting picture. The mysterious cows are described as appearing lifelike, yet their ability to vanish without a trace defies any logical explanation. Some speculate that the phenomenon might be caused by natural forces like optical illusions or reflections, but these theories fail to satisfy those who insist that they've seen something that defies explanation. Washington. Haunting of Pike Place Market. The Pike Place Market in Seattle, Washington holds a significant place in the city's history as one of its oldest public marketplaces. It was first established in 1907 following concerns over price fixing in the sale of fresh food. The Seattle City Council then created the market as a public space where local farmers and vendors could sell directly to consumers. The market quickly gained popularity, with its opening day attracting a large crowd that really brought out all the available goods. For example, Frank Goodwin, a landowner who had made his fortune during the Klondike Gold Rush, played a crucial role in the market's early development by constructing its first detailed building later that year. Then, over the following decades, additional multi-level structures were added to accommodate the growing number of vendors and patrons. These buildings still form the core of the market today. Throughout its history, Pike Place Market has housed a diverse array of vendors, offering everything from fresh produce and seafood to crafts and souvenirs. And yet, even today, it still remains a vibrant hub for commerce and tourism, drawing visitors from all across the country. But despite all of this lively atmosphere and everything, the market has a darker, more mysterious side. It's considered one of the most haunted locations in Seattle, with numerous stories of paranormal activity tied to its long history. One of the most frequently reported ghostly presences is that of Princess Angeline, the eldest daughter of Chief Seattle. The story goes that Angeline, who was known for her distinctive appearance, lived on the site where her market now stands. After her death in 1896, many claim to have seen her spirit wandering the market. Witnesses describe her moving slowly, sometimes accompanied by an ethereal glow, and often disappearing suddenly. Her ghost is also said to frequent a particular wooden column in the lower levels of the market, which is associated with unexplained cold spots and photographic anomalies. Another spirit tied to the market is Arthur Goodwin, a relative of the market's original developer. Arthur was deeply involved in its early operations, serving as market director for over 2 decades. It's said that his presence is reportedly still felt in what is now the Goodwin Library, where his silhouette has been seen overlooking the market. Witnesses have also claimed to see him practicing his golf swing in this space, which is a pastime he was known to enjoy. The market is also home to tales of kinda less benevolent spirits. One of the more disturbing legends is that of the Fat Lady Barber. It's said that this figure is said to haunt the market after falling to her death through a weakened section of the floor. The woman reportedly lulled her customers to sleep with songs before robbing them. Today, maintenance workers at the market report hearing her lullaby still late at night. And kinda away from all the individual things, various shops within the market are linked to their own spectral stories. For example, at the Bead Emporium, employees have reported unusual occurrences, including the discovery of a hidden stash of beads thought to have been hoarded by the ghost of a young boy. The boy's playful presence is also associated with unexplained cash register activity and movements of marionettes in a neighboring puppet shop. Another notable haunting involves a crystal ball said to contain the spirit of a fortune teller named Madame Nora. This artifact has moved between businesses within the market, with each owner experiencing mysterious disturbances until the crystal ball eventually settled in Sheila's magic shop. But yeah, in general, there's also been some attempts at exorcisms and various explanations, but the market's reputation as a hotspot for supernatural activity still persists. Oklahoma, the Hornet Spooklight. The Hornet Spooklight is a mysterious light that's located near the Oklahoma-Missouri border. Known as a glowing orb of light, it's been described as orange or yellow and kind of varies in size, from a baseball to a basketball. The light is said to move unpredictably along a gravel road known as the Devil's Promenade, appearing to flow, dart side by side, or hover above the treetops. Reports often mention its really eerie behavior, such as splitting into multiple smaller lights, merging back into a singular orb, and disappearing and reappearing unexpectedly. It's also been observed moving toward vehicles or people, and sometimes even entering cars or passing close enough for witnesses to feel heat radiating from it. Sightings of the light also date back as far as 1836, with some linking its origin to the Trail of Tears, though the first documented account appeared later in 1881 in the Ozark Spooklight. It's often associated with the nearby towns of Hornet, Missouri, and Joplin, Missouri because of its visibility from these areas, but the light itself is geographically located in Oklahoma. The phenomenon has now kind of become a cultural and historical interest, attracting visitors, researchers, and paranormal investigators for over a century. The light is most commonly seen between 10 p.m. and midnight, although it has appeared at other times. Its behavior seems to change depending on the number of visitors and the noise levels in the area, with some reports suggesting it's more active in quieter conditions. Numerous scientific and paranormal theories have also been proposed to explain the spooklight. Some scientists suggest it could be the result of piezoelectricity, where rocks deep underground create electrical charges because of tectonic stress, especially in areas like this region, which is known to be near the New Madrid Fault. Others have suggested that the light might be caused by marsh gases like methane, which can sometimes ignite and create glowing effects. However, the thing is, the light is resistant to wind and rain, which challenges this explanation. Skeptics have proposed that it might also be car headlights or other artificial lights reflecting off the terrain, but reports of the light predate the invention of automobiles and paved roads. To get more into the paranormal aspect, there's one story that suggests that the light is the ghostly lantern of a miner searching for his missing family after they were attacked in his absence. Another tale attributes the light to two Qupqugiaq lovers who, after being forbidden to marry, leapt to their deaths, and whose spirits are said to manifest as the glowing orb. Other accounts link the light to an Osage chief who was decapitated in the area, wandering with the lantern in search of his missing head. And about the encounters, there's been eyewitnesses who share their accounts of the whole encounters with the light. One witness described multiple visits where the light seemed to react to new people by appearing brighter or moving more erratically. On one occasion, the light reportedly split into two separate orbs before reuniting and vanishing again. Another account detailed a close encounter where the light moved toward a parked car, rested on its hood, and then exploded in a flash of brightness before disappearing. Such experiences defy common explanations and add to the enduring mystery of the spooklight. Directions to view the spooklight usually involve heading to Devil's Promenade Road southwest of Joplin, Missouri. Visitors are advised to approach the area quietly, as the light is reportedly less likely to appear with loud noises or large crowds. Mississippi, Deason Home Ghost. The Deason home, located in Ellisville, Mississippi, is the oldest structure in Jones County, dating back to its construction in 1845. This structure, which is situated on Anderson Street, has endured nearly 2 centuries, witnessing numerous events, including one particularly infamous murder during the Civil War. Basically, during the war, the Deason home served as the headquarters for Major Amos McLemore, a Confederate officer tasked with apprehending deserters from the Confederate Army. In October 1863, McLemore was then murdered in the home by Newton Knight, leader of a group of Confederate deserters who opposed the war. The shooting occurred near the fireplace in one of the home's bedrooms. It's said that this murder left a permanent mark both figuratively and literally. Blood stains from the event reportedly soaked through the wooden floorboards to the slab beneath. And despite numerous attempts over the years to scrub the stain away, witnesses claim it reappears when it rains, serving as a grim reminder of the violent history tied to the home. And Newton Knight's role in McLemore's death is part of a larger narrative of resistance in Jones County during the Civil War. The county was largely populated by poor farmers who owned few or no slaves, and many felt that the war was not their fight. Then, after the fall of Vicksburg in 1863, Knight and others deserted their Confederate posts and formed a renegade army hiding in the swamps of the region. McLemore's mission to capture these deserters ultimately led to his fatal encounter with Knight. The Deason home is also noted for other paranormal activity as well. Paranormal investigators have identified what they believe to be at least 5 distinct spirits lingering in the house. These spirits are described as sometimes violent, with reports of investigators being physically attacked during their visits. Visitors to the home have also frequently reported hearing disembodied voices, seeing objects moving on their own, and encountering figures dressed in period clothing. These phenomena are not limited to private investigations, but even during public tours and events, like the Civil War reenactments, where attendees have experienced unexplained occurrences. One especially notable incident occurred during a reenactment when a volunteer wore a dress that had once belonged to Mrs. Deason. While walking through the home, she reported hearing a voice instructing her to "get out of my dress." In another event, students from Jones County Junior College captured a recording of a woman's distressed voice saying, "Buddy, there's someone in the attic." October 5th especially, which is the anniversary of McLemore's murder, is said to be an especially active date for unexplained events at the home. On this date, the front door of the house is reported to open on its own, revealing an empty porch to those inside. Such occurrences reinforce local beliefs that the spirits tied to the Deason home remain deeply connected to the events that transpired within its walls. Arizona, the Red Ghost. The Red Ghost, also referred to as Fantasma Colorado, is a cryptid associated with Arizona's folklore, known for its really unusual appearance as a large camel-like animal with the skeletal remains of a human tied to its back. The creature's story mixes historical events and creepy encounters rooted in the 19th century and marked by a series of sightings and some physical evidence. The origins of the Red Ghost legend trace back to the mid-19th century when the United States Army undertook a unique experiment involving camels in the Southwest. These animals, which were chosen for their endurance and ability to carry heavy loads across arid landscapes, were brought to the region to assist with road building projects. This effort, referred to as the Great Camel Experiment, aimed to utilize camels for transportation and logistical support. However, the thing is, the outbreak of the Civil War disrupted the whole program. Many camels were then sold at auction or released into the wild, where they adapted to the harsh environment. This background sets the stage for the emergence of the Red Ghost and the mysterious events that followed. The first reported sighting occurred in 1883 near Eagle Creek, a remote area in southeastern Arizona. At the time, Apache resistance was waning, but isolated ranches still faced occasional threats from small bands of raiders. Then, on a quiet morning, 2 men left their ranch to check on livestock, leaving their wives and children behind. One of the women ventured to a nearby spring to fetch water while the other stayed indoors. Moments later, the dogs began barking wildly, followed by a piercing scream. Looking out the window, the woman in the house glimpsed a massive reddish-colored creature with a disturbing figure strapped to its back as it raced past. Terrified, she barricaded herself inside the house until the men returned later that day. Tragically, the woman who had gone to the spring was found dead, with her body trampled. The following morning, the men discovered enormous cloven hoofprints and strands of reddish hair near the site of her death. Shortly after, another encounter occurred near Clifton, where a group of prospectors experienced a really chaotic night. They were startled awake by the thunderous sound of hooves and an unearthly scream that tore through their campsite. Their tent collapsed as the men scrambled out, catching a fleeting glimpse of a shadowy figure illuminated by the moonlight as it fled. The next morning, they found oversized hoofprints in the dirt and strands of reddish hair clinging to nearby brush, matching the same descriptions from the Eagle Creek incident. Over time, these stories began to evolve, with locals adding increasingly outlandish details. Some claimed that the beast had killed a grizzly bear, while others swore it could vanish into thin air. Skepticism also grew alongside belief as the accounts spread. One especially notable report came from Cyrus Hamblin, who was a rancher near the Salt River. While rounding up his cattle, Hamblin encountered the creature and identified it as a camel. He also observed what appeared to be a human skeleton lashed to its back. Despite Hamblin's reputation for honesty and level-headedness, many dismissed his story as another exaggerated tale. A subsequent sighting by prospectors along the Verde River also added more physical evidence. It said that after encountering the creature, the men fired at it but failed to hit their target. During its escape, a fragment fell from its back. Upon inspection, they discovered a human skull still bearing remnants of flesh and hair. Another encounter took place near a lonely desert road where a group of teamsters was camping for the night. Awakened by a loud scream, they witnessed a massive creature which was reportedly over 30 feet tall, destroying their wagons and scattering their supplies. The men fled into the brush, returning the next day to find some unusual signs, being large cloven hoofprints and strands of red hair. One of the final documented encounters with the red ghost occurred near Phoenix. A cowboy came upon the creature grazing in a corral and attempted to rope it, a common practice among cowboys with anything resembling livestock. However, the thing is, the camel charged, knocking the cowboy and his horse to the ground before fleeing. As it escaped, the cowboy noted the skeletal remains strapped to the animal, confirming previous descriptions. The creature's eventual fate was sealed by a rancher in eastern Arizona. 9 years after its original sighting, the rancher spotted the animal grazing in his garden and shot at it with his rifle. It said that upon examination, the camel's back showed deep scars from the rawhide straps used to tie the human body to it. The scars that he found, along with the embedded remnants of the bindings, suggested some prolonged suffering. But the identity of the human skeleton and the circumstances of its attachment to the camel remain unexplained, which added to the overall mystery. Minnesota, Gray Cloud Island. Gray Cloud Island, which is a small area in Washington County, Minnesota, is well known for its ties to Native American history and the numerous stories of paranormal activity associated with it. Despite its modest population of around 300, the island attracts visitors interested in its historic sites, as well as those drawn by its reputation as one of Minnesota's most haunted locations. The island's name originates from the Mdewakanton Dakota Sioux tribe, which settled in the area during the late 1700s and early 1800s. It's said that the island was named after Gray Cloud Woman, who was the daughter of a tribal chief. Gray Cloud Woman then married a fur trader named James Aird, and their daughter Margaret Aird also took on the name Gray Cloud Woman. Margaret later married Hazen Moores, and the island was named after her. Over time, various attempts were made to establish a thriving settlement on Gray Cloud Island, but these efforts were largely unsuccessful. The island lacked basic infrastructure like schools, libraries, police stations, and churches, making it an impractical place for many to live. Today, it's home to a small number of residents and several historical landmarks, including the Gray Cloud Lime Kiln built around 1846. But yeah, about like the ghost stories and paranormal, one of the key sites involves the Grey Cloud Cemetery. One of the most well-known accounts involves seeing a green lantern, which some believe is carried by the spirit of a Native American chief who roams the cemetery. Others report seeing the green light as a floating orb or mist that moves through the cemetery, surrounding woods and nearby roads. Another story involves a Grey Cloud Woman II, who is said to appear on the island despite being buried on a Sioux reservation with her mother. Visitors have also reported hearing drumming on nights with a full moon, as well as the howling or barking of coyotes, which they believe may be tied to the spirits of the Native American burial mounds scattered across the island. One of the more unusual tales involves a phantom white truck that reportedly chases visitors. Some claim the truck has no driver and then vanishes without a trace, while others believe it may be the work of locals trying to scare away trespassers. Similarly, there's reports of a ghostly motorcycle that appears to follow people before disappearing. These accounts remain a point of contention, with some insisting they're real and others attributing them to folklore or overactive imaginations. South Carolina, Lake Murray Monster. Lake Murray, located in northern Lexington County, South Carolina, is home to a cryptid known as Messie, first reported in 1933. This creature, which is kinda likened to the Loch Ness Monster and earning the lake the nickname Loch Murray, has been described as a large snake-like animal with sightings sparking interest and debate for decades. One of the more notable encounters occurred in 1973 when Buddy and Shirley Downing, along with their friend Cord Brazel, reported being attacked by an enormous creature while fishing on the lake. According to their account, the animal surfaced from the water and charged their boat with great speed, attempting to climb aboard. Buddy then struck the creature with an oar, deterring it and forcing it to submerge. He insisted it was neither an alligator nor a sturgeon, describing it as unlike anything he had ever encountered in his 20 years of fishing on the lake. This event basically solidified the cryptid's reputation as an aggressive and mysterious presence in Lake Murray. Another sighting in the year 2000 involved Mary Shealy and her father, who initially mistook the creature for an overturned boat. Upon closer observation, though, they realized it was a massive animal with over 10 feet of its body visible above the water. And the South Carolina Parks Department maintains that there's no alligators in Lake Murray, eliminating one potential explanation for the sightings. And while the lake hosts a wide range of aquatic life, including large striped bass and catfish, none have really matched the size or behavior described in these accounts. Striped bass can reach really great sizes, with historical records of specimens over 100 pounds, but they're unlikely to be mistaken for, a cryptid attacking boats. Similarly, while catfish in the lake can grow quite large, with reports of individuals over 70 pounds, they lack the physical characteristics attributed to Messie. Snakes in the area, like water snakes and members of the culebrid family, also fail to account for the sightings. Efforts to investigate the cryptid included a study in the 1980s by biologist Lance Harper, who was tasked with collecting evidence of the creature's existence. Harper set up nets to capture fish and gathered samples, but found many of his nets damaged with large holes, suggesting the presence of something unusually strong in the water. Despite these efforts, no really definitive evidence was found, leaving the mystery unresolved. Theories about Messie's identity range from misidentified large animals or the possibility of a prehistoric species surviving in the lake's depths, which is common with a lot of these sea serpents. While sightings have become less frequent over time, the reports of an aggressive serpent-like creature charging boats and surfacing in Lake Murray still persist in the local lore. Alaska, Qupqugiaq. The Qupqugiaq is a cryptid reported from the Arctic and Pacific coasts of Alaska. Descriptions of the creature depict it as a polar bear-like animal, significantly larger than any known bear, with 6, 8, or even 10 legs. Reports claim that it can break through ice as thick as a man is tall and has been known to ambush hunters and boats in the Arctic. The Inuit have long spoken of Qupqugiaq as a unique and dangerous entity. A local account from near Point Barrow in Alaska also described the creature as so massive that the distance between its ears spanned the full stretch of a man's arms. Another story from 1913 involved a group of men who saw the creature's head emerge from the ice to observe them. Fearing the ice was too thin to support the weight of such a large animal, they quickly retreated. Some sightings suggest it uses deceptive tactics like lying on its back and waving its legs in the air while emitting distress noises to lure in prey. Despite all this, no definitive evidence of the Qupqugiaq has been reported, leaving it as a cryptid tied to cultural stories and occasional reports. Speculation continues that it may be based on misidentified bears, malformed individuals, or even exaggerations passed down through oral traditions. Connecticut, Black Dog of Meriden. The Black Dog of the Hanging Hills is a spectral canine said to haunt the Hanging Hills of Connecticut. Located in south-central Connecticut, the Hanging Hills are a range of volcanic rock ridges overlooking the towns of Meriden, Southington, and Berlin. These ridges, which are known for their distinct cliffs and linear formations, are also home to Hubbard Park, which is a recreational area spanning over 1,800 acres. And while the park is a well-loved destination for hikers and nature enthusiasts, it's also the setting for encounters with this mysterious black dog. The earliest accounts of the black dog date back to the late 18th century, though it wasn't widely documented until the 1890s. The story first gained attention when a geologist, identified only by the initials FS, encountered the creature in 1891 while he was conducting research in the area. According to his account, the black dog appeared and accompanied him throughout his exploration, never making a sound or leaving any tracks. FS described the animal as small, with large, sorrowful eyes, and also noted its silent demeanor. As the day ended, the dog vanished without warning, leaving the geologist puzzled by its sudden disappearance. Then, 3 years later, FS returned to the Hanging Hills with Herbert Marshall, a member of the United States Geological Survey. While revisiting the area, FS recounted his earlier encounter with the dog, only to discover that Marshall was already familiar with the creature. Marshall admitted to having seen the black dog twice before during previous trips to the Hanging Hills. And despite the eerie nature of their own experiences, the two men dismissed the stories as superstition and continued their work. During this visit, both men encountered the dog once more. For FS, this marked his second sighting, while for Marshall, it was his third. Shortly after the sighting, Marshall tragically fell to his death when the rock he stood on gave way, sending him plunging down the hills. The black dog then disappeared, leaving FS to flee the area, shaken by the whole events. 3 years after Marshall's death, FS returned again to the same area in the Hanging Hills. This decision proved fatal as his body was later discovered at the base of the same cliffs where Marshall had died. The circumstances surrounding his death and the repeated presence of the black dog led many to associate the creature with a dark legend. According to the tale, encountering the dog once is said to bring joy, twice brings sorrow, and a third sighting foretells death. The black dog is described as being roughly 2 feet in length, small, and unassuming in appearance. Witnesses often remark on its mournful eyes and its complete silence, basically meaning that the creature is said to make no sound, not even when it opens its mouth to bark or howl, and it even leaves no footprints as it moves. While some have attempted to explain the legend as a product of fiction, claiming it originated from an 1898 story published in the Connecticut Quarterly, others insist that the accounts are genuine. Pynchon, who the story is by, was a Harvard-educated geologist and amateur writer, and was said to have based his tale on real events. Critics argue though that Herbert Marshall never existed, but believers point to numerous unnamed witnesses who have claimed encounters with the dog long after Pynchon's time. Modern sightings of the black dog are even still reported, with witnesses describing similar experiences of a silent, shadowy canine appearing unexpectedly before vanishing without a trace. Many who have encountered the dog refuse to return to the Hanging Hills, fearing the dire consequences associated with repeated sightings. Louisiana, the ghost of Jean Lafitte. Jean Lafitte, who was the infamous pirate and smuggler, is a central figure in New Orleans' folklore, and his ghost is said to haunt several locations throughout the French Quarter. Lafitte's life, which was marked by piracy, smuggling, and his role in the War of 1812, has left behind a legacy of spectral sightings tied to places associated with his exploits. One of the most well-known legends is centered around Jean Lafitte's blacksmith shop, a building still standing in the French Quarter that served as a front for smuggling operations. The shop is rumored to hold hidden treasure buried beneath its foundations, guarded by Lafitte's spirit. Staff and visitors have reported seeing glowing red eyes in the basement and occasionally encountering the full apparition of Lafitte dressed in his garb of his time. Some stories even describe him staring silently at those who wander too close, while others claim he vanishes as quickly as he appears. And the Old Absinthe House is another location tied to Lafitte's ghost. It's said to be the site where he associated with General Andrew Jackson to provide assistance during the War of 1812. Patrons have reported seeing Lafitte and Jackson sitting at a table, with their forms appearing briefly before fading away. On the second floor too, witnesses have claimed to hear the sounds of raucous laughter and clinking glasses, accompanied by fleeting glimpses of Lafitte and his pirate crew in the midst of a long-forgotten celebration. Pirates Alley, which is a narrow passage near St. Louis Cathedral, is another site where Lafitte's ghost is said to appear. The alley, which was historically used by merchants for illicit trade, is a fitting backdrop for stories of spectral encounters. Some claim to have seen a figure resembling Lafitte strolling through the alley at night, blending into the shadows before disappearing entirely. Others report hearing disembodied footsteps and whispers as if unseen figures are conducting secret dealings in the dark. The Jean Lafitte House on Esplanade Avenue is yet another site tied to the legend. Constructed in 1809, the house is rumored to have served as a smuggling hub for Lafitte and his crew. It was in 1984 when contractors digging to install a pool discovered a tunnel beneath the property, believed to have been part of an underground network used to move contraband. Guests and staff have reported sightings of a woman in white who appears in the windows and vanishes into thin air, as well as unexplained sounds of lively parties emanating from the courtyard. Maryland, Antietam Battlefield Ghosts. The Battle of Antietam, fought on September 17, 1862 near Sharpsburg, Maryland, remains one of the most devastating and historical significant encounters of the Civil War. With over 23,100 soldiers reported wounded, killed, or missing in action, the battle left a pretty big mark on the landscape and in the memories of those who survived. Among the many locations tied to the battle, the area now known as Bloody Lane has become synonymous with its haunting history and paranormal reports. Bloody Lane, originally a sunken road separating two farms, became a focal point of the battle when Confederate forces used it as a defensive position. General Robert E. Lee ordered his men to hold the line there, and for hours, both Union and Confederate forces engaged in relentless gunfire. The Confederates initially found cover in the road, but as the Union forces advanced, the defensive position was overrun. Soldiers fell in waves and the road became a mass grave, earning its grim name. Visitors to Bloody Lane today often describe an eerie stillness that persists despite the number of tourists who walk the path. Eyewitness accounts include reports of phantom gunfire, the smell of gunpowder, and the appearance of Confederate soldiers who vanish without a trace. One account involved a visitor mistaking these apparitions for reenactors before realizing they were not of this world. And a story involves a group of Baltimore schoolboys who visited Bloody Lane and reported hearing a chant resembling the song Deck the Halls. They described the sound as fa la 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 la, repeating near the observation tower. This location is historically significant as the site of the Irish Brigade's charge, during which they cried out a Gaelic battle chant. And the connection between the historical event and the boys' experience has fueled speculation about the lingering spirits of these soldiers. Another infamous location tied to the Battle of Antietam is Burnside's Bridge. General Ambrose Burnside's forces clashed with the Confederates here in a series of intense assaults. Many soldiers were hastily buried in unmarked graves around the bridge, and the site has since become associated with reports of ghostly phenomena. Witnesses described seeing blue orbs of light and hearing the rhythmic sound of drumming, which fades into distance. The Pry House and the Piper House, both located on the battlefield, are also linked to ghost stories. Footsteps are said to echo on the stairs, and the apparition of a woman believed to be the wife of a general who died there has been reported. These houses served as critical locations during the battle, with the Pry House acting as headquarters for Union General George McClellan. And the last thing to add is in nearby Sharpsburg, the St. Paul Episcopal Church was converted into a Confederate hospital following the battle. Accounts of screams from wounded soldiers and flickering lights in the church tower continued to surface. The wounded were not only treated in the church, but also in local homes, many of which became sites of death as soldiers succumbed to their injuries. One house west of May Airy is rumored to have blood-stained floorboards that remain even after repeated attempts to remove them. Pennsylvania, the Bus to Nowhere. The Bus to Nowhere is a modern urban legend originating in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and is often described as a mysterious, supernatural vehicle that appears to individuals at their lowest moments. This unmarked bus is said to roam the streets of Philadelphia, especially in areas like West Powelton, Center City, Passyunk, and North Broad. It's a tale shrouded in mystery, one that speaks to despair, redemption, and self-discovery. According to the legend, the bus, also known as Zero or the Wandering Bus, has no schedule or listed route. Its destination display is blank, and it's entirely absent from Southeastern Pennsylvania Transit Authority, otherwise known as SEPTA, maps or timetables. The bus is said to appear only to those in deep despair, individuals who feel they have no direction or purpose and are burdened by a sense of hopelessness. It's not a bus one can search for, instead it's said to find those who need it. Witnesses describe the bus as having a unique, almost eerie presence. The drivers, whose faces are reportedly concealed by blue hats, don't engage with passengers beyond signaling for them to board. Before one can step onto the bus, they must first prove their resolve. The bus often drives past potential passengers, forcing them to chase after it for a moment. This act of pursuit is seen as a test of how desperately they need the ride. Those who hesitate or fail to pursue the bus reportedly never encounter it again. Once aboard, the experience is said to be transformative. The automated system announces the intersection where the passenger was picked up, but offers no mention of the route or destination. The passengers are then left in a state of deep reflection as the bus begins the journey. This reflective state is described as both conscious and subconscious, where individuals confront their past decisions, traumas, and regrets. Every choice, mistake, and consequence is laid bare, forcing them to face their inner demons and assess their lives with unflinching honesty. For some, this introspection lasts mere minutes, but for others, it stretches into hours, days, or even months. There are stories of passengers who claim to have been on the bus for years, caught in an extended state of mental limbo. The duration, it's said, depends on how long it takes the individual to come to terms with their circumstances, let go of regret, and find clarity about their path forward. It's said then that the end of the journey marks a turning point in their lives. Passengers are said to emerge from the reflective state with a renewed sense of purpose and understanding. Once this stage is reached, the passenger can tug the cord to request a stop. Without fanfare, the bus drops them off at the exact intersection where they were picked up, leaving them to resume their lives with newfound perspective. But yet, the origins of the legend are often traced to a 2011 blog post by comedian Nicholas Mira, who described a fictional wandering bus in Philadelphia. However, subsequent claims by supposed writers have kind of blurred the line between fiction and reality, but overall, it is a really interesting legend. Tennessee White Bluff Screamer. The White Bluff Screamer is a long-standing legend from Dickson County, Tennessee that has been passed down through generations. Centered in the area near Trace Creek and the small town of White Bluff, the story has persisted as an account of unexplained phenomena. According to local lore, the tale begins in the 1920s when a family of 9, a man, his wife, and their 7 children, moved into a modest house nestled in the hollows near the creek. After settling in, the family began to experience strange and disturbing noises emanating from the woods surrounding their home. These sounds were described as resembling the screams of a young girl mixed with animalistic howls. The screams were relentless, continuing night after night and leaving the family unable to sleep. The father, who was desperate to restore peace for his family, decided to confront whatever was causing the disturbances. Then, one evening, armed with his gun, he ventured deep into the woods, determined to put an end to the terrifying noises. As he then made his way through the dense forest, the screams abruptly ceased, leaving just silence. After a fruitless search, he began to make his way back home. However, as he neared his house, the screams resumed, but this time they were coming from within his home. The man rushed back to find a horrifying scene that his entire family had been killed, with their bodies torn apart by what was described as a savage beast. Word of the tragedy then spread quickly throughout the town. Soon after, other residents began reporting similar screams echoing through the woods, and the mysterious creature responsible became known as the White Bluff Screamer. While this original account has become the backbone of the legend, subsequent reports and personal encounters have added to the story. Basically, in the 1930s, a couple claimed to have seen a creature that might have been the Screamer. Then, in the 1940s, Edward England Sr., a local resident, reported hearing its distinctive cries as a teenager. Decades later, in the 1970s, Edward England Jr. recounted his own experience during a camping trip with his family. It said they were startled by strange sounds coming from the woods and ended up fleeing in terror, leaving their camping equipment behind. The next day, Edward and his father returned to the site and found large paw prints that suggested a large feline predator, but they never saw the creature itself. So the exact nature of the White Bluff Screamer has been the subject of much debate. Some locals theorize it was a cougar or mountain lion, which were once more common in the region. Others, though, suggest it could have been a bobcat or another wild animal capable of producing the cries. Yet, the more mysterious elements of the story, like the reported attacks and the creature's connection to the family's deaths, leave room for speculation that it might be something more than just a natural predator. Even today, the legend draws curious visitors to White Bluff, hoping to catch a glimpse or hear the screamer for themselves. Variations of the story have appeared online and in local lore, with some details changing over time. New Hampshire, Ocean-born Mary. The legend of Ocean-born Mary is rooted in New England folklore and blends the extraordinary circumstances of her birth with ghostly tales that have persisted for centuries. Born Mary Wilson on July 26, 1720, her story begins aboard a ship, the Wolf, crossing the Atlantic Ocean. Her parents, James and Elizabeth Wilson, were Scottish immigrants bound for the American colonies. According to the tale, the ship was intercepted by pirates during the voyage. The pirate captain, hearing the cry of a newborn, descended to the cabin to investigate. Struck by the infant's arrival and her mother's plight, he promised to spare the ship and its passengers on one condition, that the baby be named Mary after his own mother. As a gesture of goodwill, he presented Elizabeth with a bolt of green brocade silk intended for Mary's future wedding gown. The Wilson family then eventually settled in Londonderry, New Hampshire, but their arrival in the New World was soon marked by tragedy. James Wilson passed away shortly after they disembarked. Elizabeth then remarried, and Mary grew up within the community. On December 18, 1742, she married James Wallace, with whom she had 5 children. And the green brocade silk from her pirate encounter was reportedly incorporated into her wedding attire. Mary's children were well regarded in the community, with her sons marrying into prominent local families. Mary then lived a long life, passing away on February 13, 1814, at the age of 93. She spent her final years in Henniker, New Hampshire, residing with her son William. But the folklore surrounding Mary expanded after her death, especially regarding a house in Henniker that belonged to her son Robert. Though Mary never actually lived there, this house became the focal point of ghostly tales. In the 1930s, its owners, Louis and Flora Roy, popularized a narrative involving Mary's supposed connection with the pirate captain from her infancy. According to their account, the captain reunited with Mary during her widowhood, and after his mysterious murder in the house, Mary was said to have buried him and his treasure beneath the hearthstone. Reports of ghostly activity soon followed. Visitors and passerby described encounters with a tall, red-haired woman in colonial dress, either appearing at the door of the house or seen walking along the road. These sightings fueled speculation about the alleged hidden treasure and Mary's lingering presence, though no evidence of buried wealth or remains has ever been discovered. Wyoming, Ghostly Bride of the Plains Hotel. Cheyenne, Wyoming has long been a hub of local lore and ghostly tales, and a walk through its downtown offers glimpses into the city's storied past. One of the most intriguing stops is an 1871 building that once housed the Adams and Glover Drug Co. and now operates as a series of antique shops, including one known as Our Place. Its current owners, Bruce and Don Bristow, were initially skeptical of any paranormal activity but have since been convinced otherwise by a series of unexplained events. They recount hearing footsteps in an empty room above, catching fleeting reflections of denim-clad legs in a mirror, and experiencing the inexplicable ringing of a small bell, which occurred while Don was seated right next to it. These occurrences have left visitors and owners alike searching for explanations, yet the bell's spontaneous ringing remains a mystery. And the historic Plains Hotel adds another layer to Cheyenne's ghostly history. Open for nearly a century, it's hosted numerous prominent figures and carries tales of tragic events. One infamous story centers around Rosie, who was a bride honeymooning at the hotel who discovered her husband's affair with a sex worker in Peacock Alley, a corridor historically associated with such encounters. Overcome with rage and despair, Rosie reportedly shot both her husband and the woman before turning the gun on herself. The room where this took place, 444, has since become the site of unexplained phenomena, including crying sounds attributed to the victims. Guests frequently request this room, hoping to encounter its lingering spirits. Hotel staff also report strange occurrences and mention other apparitions, including a man said to have been pushed or to have fallen from a 4th floor window. While the details of these stories remain fragmented, their impact continues to resonate, drawing interest from visitors. And Cheyenne's ghost stories are not confined to its buildings, but seem to mix with its dramatic landscapes. The surrounding terrain, which is a mix of flat plains and towering buttes, provides an almost cinematic backdrop that has fueled imaginations. The constantly shifting scenery, from expansive prairies to the sudden rise of forests in the Medicine Bow National Forest, creates a pretty fitting atmosphere for tales of wandering spirits. Kansas, Saline River Ghost. The legend of Takaluma, an Indian ghost said to haunt the banks of the Saline River in Kansas, centers around his unending quest to recover his father's skull. Takaluma's father, a chief, was reportedly murdered by white settlers in the 1840s, and his remains were buried near the river. The story holds that the skull was later unearthed by a farmer digging in his field, disturbing the grave and leaving Takaluma condemned to wander the area until the remains are returned to their proper resting place. Then, on January 23, 1879, a cowboy reported encountering Takaluma's ghost near the Saline River. The cowboy recounted hearing an eerie, piercing yell before seeing the figure of a large, imposing Indian emerge from the darkness. Startled, the cowboy fired his revolver, but the apparition remained unscathed. Speaking in clear English, the ghost then introduced himself as Takaluma, a chief of the Incianes people, and explained that he had been wandering for countless years in search of his father's skull. Takaluma warned that if the skull was not returned within 2 months, more powerful spirits would join him in seeking justice. The cowboy described how Takaluma shared a story of his people's history, claiming they had crossed the ocean long ago and settled in the valley near the Saline River. Then, over time, his tribe was decimated by a plague, leaving their remains undisturbed until settlers arrived. The intrusion of plows and farmland disturbed the burial grounds, further intensifying the spirit's unrest. Takaluma urged the cowboy to use his influence to ensure the skull's return, explaining that he lacked the power to enter homes where it might be kept. Another related story comes from the Mock family, who owned land near the Saline River. According to family accounts, a cowboy working for them encountered a ghost who warned against plowing a specific pasture believed to be an ancient burial ground. The apparition appeared twice to deliver the message, leading the family to abandon their plans to cultivate the field. So, to this day, local tradition holds that the area remains undisturbed. While the skull was never confirmed to have been returned and no evidence has verified the burial site, the story of Takaluma has persisted. It serves as a warning of the consequences of disturbing sacred land and a reminder of the cultural significance of respecting burial grounds. Iowa, Stony Hollow Cliff. The legend of Stony Hollow Road in Des Moines County, Iowa, revolves around the story of Lucinda, a young woman from the 1800s whose tragic fate is said to linger in the area as a haunting presence. The road, located just north of Burlington, is notorious for its creepy reputation, and many locals avoid traveling there after dark. According to the legend, Lucinda planned to meet her fiancé at the Bluffs along Stony Hollow Road, where the couple intended to elope. However, the plan went wrong when her fiancé failed to arrive. Different versions of the story offer various explanations for his absence, one of which suggests that his horse-drawn wagon became stuck in the mud, preventing him from reaching her. Heartbroken and overcome with despair, Lucinda reportedly threw herself off the cliffs, ending her life. The tragic events of Lucinda's death have given rise to numerous reports of paranormal activity in the area. Travelers and visitors to Stony Hollow Road often recount seeing the silhouette of a woman who matches Lucinda's description. Some claim to have seen her figure covered in blood, while others report unexplained car malfunctions near the spot where she is believed to have leapt to her death. And one of the most chilling aspects of the legend involves a supposed ritual for summoning Lucinda's spirit. It's said that if someone ventures to the cliff where she died and calls her name 3 times, Lucinda will appear. Those who claim to have performed the ritual describe witnessing her ghostly figure materialize only with a foreboding presence. And it's also said that if Lucinda leaves a rose at the feet of the summoner, it's an omen of death, giving the individual only 24 hours to live. Another part of the legend connects Lucinda to a farmhouse located on the road, which locals believe is cursed. The house is said to remain abandoned, and some suggest it may be tied to her story, though the details surrounding this connection vary. North Dakota, White Lady Lane. The story of White Lady's Lane in Walhalla, North Dakota, centers on the tragic and violent events surrounding Anna's story and her enduring spectral presence. According to local accounts, Anna was a young girl living with her family in a modest shack near the railroad tracks by Leiden, North Dakota. At the time, a Syrian peddler named Sam Khalil regularly traveled through the area, selling household goods from his wagon. It's said he became infatuated with Anna and proposed marriage despite their significant age difference. Anna's mother, unwilling to outright refuse the peddler, devised a plan to delay him. She promised Sam that he could marry Anna when she turned 16 if he allowed her to freely take items from his wagon in the meantime. Sam agreed to the agreement, visiting regularly and leaving goods for the family. However, when Anna reached 16, her mother rejected Sam's proposal and ordered him to leave. The refusal enraged Sam. Fueled by a sense of betrayal, he forced his way into their home armed with a pistol. He then shot Anna, who was still in her white nightgown, killing her instantly. Her mother tried to intervene, but was also shot, with a bullet breaking her jaw. Anna's two younger brothers managed to escape through a window and ran to a neighbor's house for help. After the attack, Sam attempted to take his own life. His pistol though misfired, and his subsequent effort to slit his throat with a pocket knife was unsuccessful. When authorities arrived, Sam surrendered without resistance. He was then convicted of murder and sentenced to life in prison at Bismarck State Penitentiary. However, after serving only 10 years, Sam was released at the age of 71 to live with relatives in Minnesota. Anna's mother survived the attack but bore the physical scars for the rest of her life. Anna, however, became the subject of local lore. It's said that her restless spirit now haunts the area near a misty bog called Eddie's Bridge. On Halloween night, she is reportedly seen wandering the area, dressed in the same white nightgown she wore the night of her death. Locals claim that she appears to be searching, perhaps for the peace she never found in life. Some variations of the story also suggest additional details, such as Anna's pregnancy and tragic end, though these are less substantiated. Nebraska, the Salt Witch. The story of the Salt Witch of the Nebraska Plains originates from Native American lore and was later retold in works such as Charles M. Skinner's Myths and Legends of Our Own Land. The tale centers on a peculiar column of salt that once stood on the Nebraska prairie near the junction of the Saline and Platte rivers, about 40 miles from the rivers' confluence. Local tribes referred to this formation as the Salt Witch, and its presence was mixed with their beliefs and storytelling traditions. The legend recounts a time when a powerful chief of a local tribe resided in the area. He was revered for his strength but known for his solitary nature, softened only by his love for his wife. When she passed away, the chief became reclusive, withdrawing from tribal life. His grief eventually gave way to frustration as whispers arose among his people about choosing a new leader. One day, the chief donned his war attire and left the village, heading westward alone. A month later, he returned to the village with fresh trophies from a conflict and a lump of salt, which he claimed was from a mysterious experience. He explained to his people that during his journey, he lay down to rest on the prairie and was awakened by a disturbing scene. In the faint moonlight, he saw an elderly woman holding a tomahawk over a young woman who was begging for mercy. The younger woman appeared to be the chief's deceased wife. Enraged, the chief attacked the older woman, striking her with his own weapon. Before he could embrace his wife, though, the earth opened, swallowing both women. In their place, a tall pillar of salt emerged. The chief described the older woman as a supernatural entity, what came to be known as the Salt Witch. Over time, the salt pillar then became a site of both utility and superstition. The local tribes viewed the column as a manifestation of the Salt Witch's power and believed it was under her protection. They would visit the site to collect salt, but performed rituals to ward off her supposed wrath, often beating the ground with clubs in an effort to keep her spirit subdued. Ohio, Utopia, Ohio. The small, unincorporated town of Utopia, located along the Ohio River in Clermont County, Ohio, is most known for its eerie ruins and the legend tied to its so-called underground church. This site, which is reportedly the basement of a long-gone structure, has been the subject of haunting tales and supernatural speculation. The story, often mentioned in connection with the location, centers around a group of spiritualists and their tragic demise during a flood in 1847. Utopia was founded in 1844 as a utopian community inspired by the writings of Charles Fourier. The settlement aimed to embody Fourier's idea of a harmonious communal society. The first settlers paid a yearly fee to live there and received small parcels of land and houses. However, within 3 years, the Fourierist experiment failed and the land was sold to John O. Wattles, a leader of a group of spiritualists. The spiritualists relocated to Utopia and, despite warnings from locals, dismantled a dining hall and rebuilt it on the river's edge. The move was completed in December 1847, just days before one of the most devastating floods in the area's history. Then, on December 13, during a gathering in the newly rebuilt hall, the Ohio River overflowed its banks, breaching the structure. The floodwaters washed away much of the building and its occupants. Some survived the disaster, but many were swept away and drowned in the icy waters. Those who perished became central to the haunting tales surrounding the site. The so-called underground church is said to be haunted by the spirits of these flood victims. Legends describe ghostly presences within the ruins, and visitors have reported feelings of unease or hearing unexplained noises. Some accounts even suggest that rituals conducted by the spiritualists in their time there have left a lingering spiritual energy tied to the location. The area was later reorganized in 1847 by Josiah Warren as an individualist anarchist colony, which operated with a unique market economy based on labor notes. This second iteration of Utopia persisted for several years, eventually dissolving because of external pressures like the Civil War and the high cost of land. Then, by the mid-1850s, the town was largely abandoned, leaving behind a legacy of unfulfilled utopian dreams and ghostly stories. Vermont, Lake Memphremagog Monster. Lake Memphremagog, located in Vermont and extending into Quebec, Canada, is home to a legend involving a lake monster known as Gog. Over the years, sightings and stories of this serpent-like creature have become part of local lore. Gog is described as a massive aquatic creature, often characterized as a serpent or a monster preying on the lake's fish. This depiction has fueled both fear and fascination, with many linking it to similar legendary lake creatures worldwide. The origin of Gog's legend is kinda unclear, but local narratives have attributed numerous sightings to this monster. The creature has been described as long, with humps breaking the water's surface, which is reminiscent of other famous lake creatures. Witness accounts also vary widely, with some describing multiple humps moving in the water, while others claim to have seen an extended shadow or figure gliding through the lake's depths. These reports often arise from fishermen, hunters, and locals who have spent considerable time near the lake. Many purported sightings have later been explained though as misidentifications of natural phenomena. Common culprits include swimming animals like moose or loons, large logs floating on the water, and even the optical effects of light and mist on the lake's surface. For example, in one instance, a group of loons diving and surfacing rhythmically was mistaken for a multi-humped serpent. On another occasion, a moose swimming across the lake was thought to be Gog. And some stories from locals detail loud, unexplained splashes or crashes near the shore and sightings of large, dark shapes moving swiftly under the water. However, no concrete evidence of Gog's existence has been found. Photographs and videos purporting to show the creature have been inconclusive, often revealing nothing more than natural occurrences upon closer examination. New York, the ghost of Grace Brown. The haunting of Big Moose Lake in the Adirondacks is attributed to Grace Brown, whose tragic death in 1906 continues to resonate in local lore. Grace, a 19-year-old factory worker, had a secret relationship with Chester Gillette, the nephew of her employer. Their affair became complicated when Grace discovered she was pregnant and sought marriage, a demand Chester resisted. Then, in July 1906, Chester took Grace to Big Moose Lake, ostensibly for a wedding trip. They then rented a rowboat, but Grace never returned alive. The boat was found overturned and her body was discovered in the lake. Chester was arrested shortly after and claimed Grace drowned herself out of despair. However, the evidence contradicted his account and he was convicted of her murder. Chester was then executed in 1908. The legend of Grace's ghost then began with reports of sightings at the lake. Witnesses claimed to have seen a woman in white or experienced unexplainable sensations near the water. Some describe feeling an overwhelming sadness or encountering mysterious lights that extinguish unexpectedly. Others have reported hearing phantom footsteps or kitchen noises in Grace's former home. These stories suggest Grace's spirit remains tethered to the place of her death, either searching for justice or unable to move on from the betrayal and loss she suffered. Missouri, Wilson's Creek. The legend surrounding Wilson's Creek battlefield centers on the lingering presence of ghostly soldiers believed to haunt the site of the 1861 battle. Visitors and locals have long reported seeing spectral figures on Bloody Hill, where some of the most intense fighting occurred. Many describe encountering apparitions dressed in Civil War-era uniforms, most often Confederate soldiers who seem to replay scenes from the battle as though caught in a perpetual loop of their final moments. Numerous accounts include hearing unexplainable sounds resembling the discharge of muskets and the booming of cannons, even though no reenactments or activities are occurring nearby. Others report muffled voices and the steady rhythm of marching boots emanating from the surrounding woods, accompanied by cold spots that defy natural explanations. And a particular focus of the ghost stories is the hill itself, where General Nathaniel Leon, the first Union general killed in the Civil War, fell in battle. Witnesses claim to have seen a figure resembling Leon moving purposefully among the phantom troops as though still leading his men. Some believe his restless spirit lingers due to his untimely death and the unfinished cause of securing Missouri for the Union. South Dakota, Sitka Hollow State Park. Sitka Hollow, a remote area in northeast South Dakota, has a reputation for being a place of mystery and the unexplained. Basically, the Dakota Sioux, who once used the area as a prime hunting ground, were among the first to speak of its unusual nature. They named it Sitka, which means bad or evil, believing the land was tied to strange and disturbing events. One of the most talked about features is the reddish water that seeps from springs in the area, which the Sioux said was blood from their ancestors. While it's now understood to be caused by minerals in the water, the legends surrounding it have never faded. A path in the park called the Trail of Spirits has become central to the stories about Sitka Hollow. Over the years, people walking the trail have reported hearing things they couldn't explain, like drumming, chanting, cries, and even war whoops. Some claim to have seen figures that look like Native American warriors, while others describe the woods as eerily quiet, with no birds or animals in sight. And in the 1840s, Robert Roy became the first white settler to live near what is now Sitka Hollow State Park. The Dakota thought he was reckless, if not outright crazy, for choosing to live in a place they avoided. Then, when a group of US soldiers visited Roy's secluded home, they reportedly found it so difficult to navigate the dense ravines that they agreed with the Dakota's view that the area was unfit for living. Then, as more settlers moved into the region, stories about Sitka Hollow continued to grow. For example, in the 1970s, the area gained a new layer of mystery when several people disappeared there. Hunting parties then searched the rugged terrain, with some participants openly admitting they were on the lookout for a creature they believed lived in the woods, a large Bigfoot-like figure reported by locals. Though some thought it might be a bear, no clear evidence of the creature or the missing people was ever found. Other strange happenings have added to the area's reputation. People talk about glowing swamp gas, animal tracks that seem impossibly large, and campfires that appear at a distance but vanish when approached. Some trails reportedly stretch longer than they should, leading to feelings of disorientation. Many visitors describe the park also as unusually quiet, with an absence of typical wildlife sounds, which only amplifies the whole creepy atmosphere. The landscape itself is also a mix of deep ravines and thick forests shaped by the glaciers that receded thousands of years ago. The Dakota call the area Pahatanka, or Great Hills, and it's easy to see why. The park's natural beauty is undeniable, but for many, it's the sense that something is just a little off that sticks with them long after they leave. But yeah, people have shared experiences of hearing phantom drumming, seeing strange lights, or even just encountering unexplained tracks in the snow. Illinois, Coal Hollow Road Monster. The Coal Hollow Road Monster, also known as Cohomo, was a reported hairy humanoid that gained attention in central Illinois during the 1970s. This creature was described as being between 8 and 9 feet tall, covered in whitish gray hair and resembling a mix of an ape and a caveman. Witnesses noted its distinct physical traits such as long, rounded ears, red lips, human-like hands, and footprints with only 3 toes. It was also said to emit a strong foul odor, often linked to a combination of wet dog and rotten eggs. And the first reported sighting came in May 1972 when Randall Emmer and his friends claimed to have seen the creature in the woods near Coal Hollow Road in Pekin, Illinois. Emmer then shared his account with a local radio station describing the creature in detail. Soon after, reports from other witnesses began to flood in. On May 25th, East Peoria police received over 200 calls from individuals claiming to have seen the monster. Sightings describe the creature moving through wooded areas, along riverbanks, and even into residential yards. One report even detailed the creature damaging a fence. The reports then sparked a frenzy, leading to public searches for the monster. In July 1972, a large group of about 100 people ventured into the woods in search of the creature, but the effort was cut short after one participant accidentally shot himself in the foot. Subsequent sightings continued, with witnesses claiming to see the monster swimming in the Illinois River, lurking near an abandoned mine, and roaming the area late at night. Despite the wave of sightings though, the story of Cohomo took a turn years later when Randall Emmer admitted in an interview that he and his friends had fabricated their initial sighting as a prank. According to Emmer, their claims spiraled out of control as others began reporting their own encounters, possibly influenced by the hysteria surrounding the story. Even with the revelation of the hoax though, interest in the Coal Hollow Road monster still persists. Some believe that the reported sightings were not entirely fabricated and point to the area's history of Bigfoot-like creature sightings. Wisconsin, Dublin, Wisconsin. Reports about Dublin, Wisconsin tell the story of a town that allegedly vanished in the early 1990s. This mysterious claim, often regarded as a modern urban legend, has sparked interest despite the lack of verifiable evidence. Accounts suggest that Dublin was a small community situated in central Wisconsin. However, no historical maps or official records mention it, leading to speculation that it may only exist in collective memory or imagination. Some claim to have seen souvenirs like mugs and shirts bearing the town's name, while others recall personal or family connections to Dublin. Yet these anecdotes lack corroborating evidence, leaving the town's existence questionable. Discussions around Dublin often focus on theories explaining its supposed disappearance. These range from natural disasters such as sinkholes or earthquakes to more speculative causes like supernatural forces erasing it from reality. Another theory suggests that economic hardship forced residents to leave, resulting in the town's quiet abandonment. One especially eerie claim suggests that Dublin's people and structures might not have disappeared entirely, but instead remained hidden, visible only as ghostly apparitions under certain conditions. Reports describe seeing faint outlines of buildings or hearing footsteps in the mist where the town supposedly stood. Despite all these possibilities though, no concrete evidence supports these stories, and most consider them fabrications or exaggerated local lore, just like a hoax. The legend of Dublin endures primarily as an online curiosity though, reflecting society's fascination with lost places and the unknown. Delaware, Ghost of Mr. Qu House. The Mr. Qu House, which is located in Delaware, has been the subject of a dark and persistent legend that dates all the way back to the late 1800s. The house, originally owned by Samuel Qu, a wealthy merchant, has stood as a silent witness to stories of misfortune and disturbing events. Samuel Qu himself was a private man whose interactions with the local community were minimal. He was known for his interest in collecting rare artifacts and books, many of which reportedly involved topics like alchemy and the occult. The rumors intensified after Qu's death, which was surrounded by unusual circumstances. Some claimed that he had gone mad during his final days, isolating himself in his mansion. His death, while officially attributed to natural causes, left unanswered questions. And after his passing, the house ended up falling into disrepair. Over time, local residents began reporting unexplained phenomena like lights flickering in the windows despite no electricity in the house, and strange noises emanating from within its walls. The house ended up gaining a reputation as a place to just avoid, yet it also attracted thrill seekers and paranormal investigators. Accounts of visitors varied, but several described hearing footsteps, doors slamming on their own, and a heavy atmosphere inside the house. One of the most detailed accounts came from a group of teenagers who entered the house out of curiosity. They described finding a hidden room on the upper floor filled with dusty books and artifacts. Among these items, they discovered a journal believed to have belonged to Samuel Qu. The journal contained handwritten notes detailing experiments and what appeared to be attempts to summon spirits. These entries suggested that Qu may have been trying to extend his own life through these rituals. One night, as the group explored deeper into the house, they reported encountering an apparition that they believed to be Samuel Qu. The figure was described as appearing translucent and moving silently toward them. They then fled the house in fear, later recounting their experience to the community. So yeah, over the years, various theories have emerged regarding the source of, all the phenomena. Some believe that Qu's experiments opened a sort of portal to another realm, trapping both his spirit and other entities inside the house. Others suggest that the sightings and experiences are the result of residual energy left behind by the intense emotions tied to Qu's life and death. Skeptics, however, attribute the events to natural causes like creaking floorboards, drafts, and the power of suggestion.